really alive? Are any of us really alive? Cheers. Welcome to the Vampire Book Club, which is not a book club for vampires, though if you are a vampire, call me. But a book club where we talk about vampire books. Tonight, I am drinking out of a goblet because you can't stop me. I love goblets. I made I guess kind of a martini, even though I put ice in it instead of shaking it over ice because I like things cold. It is Screwball whiskey, peanut butter whiskey, with Godiva chocolate liqueur and a bit of cream. So it's a chocolate peanut butter cream martini in a goblet. Cheers. There weren't really any drinks of note in this book, other than blood. Lots of blood. The food of note in this book was an interesting story. But you know, drinks, so I can drink what I want. Chocolate peanut butter, because when the zombie apocalypse happens, chocolate and peanut butter will be things that I miss a lot. I would miss chocolate and peanut butter. Though peanut butter has a long shelf life, so I think we'd be good in peanut butter for a while at least a couple years. Yes, my haunted mansion, it's a onesie. It has a hood. It's like a big jammy thing. It goes all the way down to my ankles. Zips up the front. Yeah, I did my lips in purple, my eyeshadow in purple this time to match the haunted mansion onesie. I'm stalling. Yes, I'm stalling because I'm waiting for more people to join the stream so we can talk about the book and they won't miss any of the gory details. I say literally this time. Very gory details in this very gory book. This is really good. Smooth too. I don't usually like whiskey. I'm not a whiskey fan, especially peaty, smoky whiskeys. Definitely not into Scotch. American whiskey can be okay, but it's not my favorite thing. But you make a peanut butter whiskey and mix it with chocolate liqueur, and it's good. It doesn't taste like whiskey at all to me. It tastes like peanut butter. You love the gore in this book. It was a very gory book, especially compared to the last few books we've read. It's a very big change from the last few books we've read, which is good. We like variety book club, and it was just kind of happenstance as the last couple of books we read were very similar to each other, which was not intentional. It's just kind of the way the cookie crumbled. I always put up a few books for a vote and let people choose, and those were the books the voters chose. And the theme of those happened to be, one was a theme about Dracula's Brides, and one was a theme about the new books that had been released recently, and one about Dracula's Brides was one that won. So yeah, 2 books about Dracula's Brides in a row. So we're going in a very different direction this time. We went with a very gory, non-romantic vampire book, and we didn't vote because I chose this book. Executive decision. It was my choice because it was my birthday, and I get to do things I want on my birthday. And this is a book I've been wanting to read for a very long time because, story goes, I wrote a book. You may have heard of it. It's right here. It's called The Company of Death by me. And I started writing this in 2009. And I didn't actually get it published until 2019 just because, you know, it took a couple years to write, and then it took a couple... Sorry, I just realized my microphone was over there. Can you hear me better now? Yeah. All right. Then it took like a few years to get it published, and you know, books take a long time to get done. So I conceived this book well before I was even aware that this other book existed, but they're very similar. So I heard about this other book that was so similar to my book, and I was like, well, I gotta read it, but I don't want to read it till I'm done writing my book, and so I don't want it to influence me or like upset me if I'm just like, they did the exact same thing I did. So this book is part of a trilogy. All 3 books are planned out. The last book isn't fully written yet, but it's fully outlined. Like I know exactly what's going to happen. So now I'm free to read things that are similar without worrying about it influencing my writing. So I finally picked up a copy of Double Dead by Chuck Wendig, which came out in 2011, which means he was probably writing this around the exact same time I was writing mine. two minds, great minds think alike. Sorry about the microphone, guys. This is actually the complete Double Dead, which includes the original novel Double Dead, as well as the sequel follow-up novella, Bad Blood. We just read Double Dead, the first story in this book. The novella is only this much of the book, and this is the part we read. If I had had more time, I would have read the novella, just to see where it went, because that's the complete story. It's not like an ongoing series, it's just those. Oh, thank you, Princess Tia, for the $3. And I was aware of Chuck Wendig as an author on Twitter that a lot of other authors I was into and following and even know personally follow. So I followed him on Twitter just because, you know, he made good tweets back before Twitter kind of went haywire. It's still kicking, but, you know, we don't really use it anymore. Actually, ever since I got Discord, I stopped using Twitter. Because instead of like updating about my life and what I'm reading and what's going on just to the general Twitter void, I just talk to you guys about it on Discord personally, and we actually have conversations about it. So why would I go over to Twitter and post the same thing? Yeah, so Discord is the new Twitter for me personally. I had never read any of his other work though. This was his first novel, but he'd been a writer for a long time before this novel. He wrote short stories, he wrote TV scripts, he wrote screenplays, and then after this novel, he started writing more novels in the Star Wars expanded universe and other series. But, you know, for a first novel, it doesn't have that, like, first novel, getting your feet wet, give it grains of salt thing, because he was a very prolifically experienced writer before that. He just hadn't written something of this length and style. However, I thought the way it was written was very cinematic. It read very much like it could have been a screenplay. There's even like one part that's like cut to, you know, it's very screenplay specifically like laid out. You could really visualize it. Someone in book club said they thought it would make a great graphic novel. It would. There goes my bookmark. And I don't mind that. I like cinematic books. I like visual books. And I didn't mind that it was kind of an omniscient point of view. We had a few main characters' point of view we're in, but then every once in a while we go into like a random zombie's point of view and just, you know, see them for 5 minutes and then they be gone and we never see them again. That's kind of like a screen play sort of situation where you're following kind of the main protagonist, but every once in a while you cut away to the danger and see what's going on there, even though the protagonists don't have a view of that. So you can do that in a movie. Which is interesting to me because when I was writing my book, I was told I had too many points of views and I had to narrow it down. I had to keep a very close third person, practically first person point of view, whereas this didn't have any of those restrictions and it did fine. We'll talk more about that later. I will compare this book to mine when I'm done talking about this book. So I'm going to try to hold all those things in while I talk about this book. So the premise of this book, which caught my interest so much, is that it is a zombie apocalypse. This book takes place in present day, which is 2011 in this, unlike my book, which takes place in like sci-fi future. Not gonna compare. Okay. So the zombie apocalypse happened 2 years ago, same as in my book, in 2009, and it's been going strong for 2 years. The world is ravaged, the world is destroyed, and there's this vampire named Coburn, who, as far as he knows, is the only vampire in the world. He is not aware of any other vampires that exist, though he's sure they probably do out there, but he's never met one. And even the one who made him, he has no memories of that. He just knows he's out there somewhere. So this vampire Coburn has been in a death sleep, buried in the ground for about 5 years. And some blood starts leaking down into his slumbering place, and it revives him, kind of very Dracula style of like Dracula always comes back, the blood drips down. Revives him, he poofs back into a like healthy, robust vampire. But he's very, very thirsty. He wants a lot more blood. And when it comes up to the surface, he sees this apocalyptic wasteland of Manhattan, New York City, which was where he was buried. And there's no people, there's no blood he can drink. He sees some zombies, he doesn't realize what's going on. He tries to bite and drink a zombie, but it doesn't work. It's like repulsive to him. He cannot subsist off that blood. He can sort of subsist off animals a little bit, so there's a deer and he kind of drinks that, but it's not good enough. He needs human blood, otherwise he's just going to shrivel up into a husk and die again and have to go back into the ground and sleep again. we find out that his lifestyle before he got into the ground for this death sleep was very closed off. He didn't really have any social life. He didn't have any like hobbies. He didn't have any friends. He just lived in Manhattan, would go out clubbing, dancing, get some victims, drink some blood, lather, rinse, repeat every night of his life. I don't know what his hopes and dreams were. He just loved partying and drinking blood, and he was kind of like a base instinct kind of creature, but he's still fully intelligent. He is a person. He does not have any memories of his life before he became a vampire. We find out that he's been a vampire for about 50 years, so he became a vampire in like the 1960s, I guess, and he was a full-grown adult then, about in his 30s, so he was born in the 1930s, we'll say. And, just loves his like cushy Manhattan lifestyle. But now it's gone, and now he needs to eat, and Manhattan is kind of the worst place to be because where the people were thickest, the zombies are thickest, and no people got away. And out in middle of America where things are sparse, where the zombies were sparse, a lot of people were more able to survive. So he doesn't realize this yet. He just knows he needs to eat. So he starts off looking for food, and as we get to know him, so the back of the book, our very first understanding of him is, you wouldn't like Coburn. People don't as a rule, and that's okay because he doesn't like people much either. People are food. Yes, I do not like Coburn. Our first introduction to him, he was an awful, horrible asshole. He's just mean and like filthy. Like he's funny, but in a very like self-satisfied way. He's written as this very like badass anti-hero who's just like such an asshole to everybody. And that's fine. You can have a really disgusting, awful character, and it's interesting to follow them. My main personal beef with it was that the way he's written to be this such horrible person, the way the writer's writing it, you get the impression that he still expects you to think Coburn is cool. And I did not think he was cool. And this sort of smug confidence he has of like, yeah, I'm an asshole, but of course you love me because I'm so badass. Aren't I more badass than anyone else? No, I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like being in his head. He had zero redeeming qualities. So when he finds food, he finds a guy by the river who's like a cannibal, and he's eating a person he found, and he also has a dog and a cat in a cage, and he's going to eat them. So Coburn kills this guy, drinks his blood, recovers, but he takes the dog, and he's like, boat snack, you're going to be my cream puff later. So he names the dog Cream Puff, and he fully plans to eat this dog, right? So there's this concept when you're writing very cinematic stories. It's actually screenplay concept, but it works for novels too if they follow like a 3-act structure, called Save the Cat. And there's a book written about it called Save the Cat. It's like a how-to writing book. A very good book if you're a writer. I highly recommend it. Peanut buttery. So the concept of Save the Cat is that if you have a protagonist that the audience or the reader just thrown into his world, you need a reason to care about this person. And if there's no real good reason to care about them, like sometimes the plot provides that, sometimes the circumstances provide that. As a vampire, I like vampires. I would be interested in vampire, like, oh, how's he going to survive the zombie apocalypse without any humans around? That's an interesting, dilemma for him to have. I'm invested. But he is so unlikable, so off-putting, and yet proud of himself for being so that you just like can't even think he's funny or cool about it at this point in the story. He did grow on me later. I did start liking him, but it took me about 200 pages to get there. So I could tell that the author was aware of this, that he knew people weren't going to like this protagonist. Starts right, you wouldn't like him. That's how the book starts. So he has him save the dog. It's a save the cat situation. But the idea of Save the Cat is that you see this like really gritty, tough guy, no feelings kind of person, being badass, shooting guns. You kind of like in media res get dropped into a movie or a book. And before you have a reason to care about them or identify with them, they need to do something that shows they have sensitive feelings. They need to do something that shows they have a sparkle of good in their heart, something to make the audience feel like, okay, this is a real person. He's not just like a badass Terminator war machine. He has feelings and I can connect to him. So the concept is like if he's shooting people up and like fighting, there's a cat there and he saves the cat and he doesn't let the cat die because, he's kind to animals. And that's how an audience could connect to this person, because he saves the cat and we see that he has a sensitive side, even though he's so badass. But when Coburn saves the dog, he's not doing it because he's sensitive at all. He's doing it because he wants to eat the dog later and he's taking it as a snack. So the whole like save the cat obvious attempt of tactic here doesn't work for me. He's not taking the dog because like, oh, I just happen to be a dog person and I'm going to save you, dog. Like, you know, he doesn't even have to be like sappy about it. But no, he has zero interest in this dog as a creature, as something lovable. He only does it to eat him. And he does wind up bonding with the dog and growing to love the dog later, but it takes him a while. It's sort of like, you know, you did well today, Wesley, but I'll kill you in the morning situation till he eventually likes the dog. But it takes a while for him to stop thinking of the dog as a snack. So, yeah, it didn't work for me. So I really didn't like this guy. But I was invested in the world, so I kept reading it. I could see how a lot of people would be put off by this book just by how awful he is at the beginning without that glimmer of redeeming quality to make you like him. And if I wasn't reading for book club, and if I wasn't reading because it reminded me of my book, I might have put it down just because I'm like, this guy's gross. I don't want to spend 300 pages with him. So he's got a goal. He's got an obstacle. He needs to eat. He needs to find blood. He can only go so many days without drinking human blood. Otherwise, he withers back into a husk and will have to go back into the ground for his death sleep. The obstacle is the zombie wasteland, and he has like nowhere to go. So he smells like a vehicle on the wind. He has super vampiric senses. Oh, and we also learn about his vampire powers right away. So he can completely heal himself. When he wakes up from the death sleep, he's missing his middle finger. And we find out later that he had like flicked someone off right before he died, and the guy chopped off his middle finger. So he wakes up without his middle finger. And once he has blood, the middle finger grows right back. So he can regrow limbs. He falls down when he's running away from the zombies and he shatters all his bones. His bones mend. You know, if he gets holes in him, he gets, they heal. But we know that he needs blood, and he uses blood like fuel. Like it's kind of like a Vampire the Masquerade where you have your blood points, and if he uses up so many blood points, he's out of blood and he needs to refill. And he like physically channels the blood in his body to wherever part of his body needs healing or whatever needs strength. So if he needs to run really fast, he'll channel into his legs. If he needs to lift something heavy, he'll channel it into his arms. If he needs to smell really well, he'll channel it into his senses. If he needs to heal, he'll channel it there, and it's burning up like fuel. And this fuel equivalent is also something that reminded me of my book, so we'll get to that later. So we learn his vampire powers. Super strong, super fast, can jump really far. He can't fly, he can't transform into things, he can't like do some other like more of the supernatural vampire things. He does burn up in the sun. He sleeps during the day. He's not completely catatonic. He does have some awareness and he does dream, but he can't do anything during the day. It's not like if he was in a dark room, he could be awake and walking around. No, he's just out during the day. Like it's a very Anne Rice vampire take, which I like. That's one of my favorite types of vampires. So he's on his mission. He smells a vehicle on the wind. He follows this vehicle until he finds this group of people. And now we cut to their point of view and we get to know this group of people first before he catches up to them. So we have Kayla, who's a teenage girl. She's very sickly. She's dying of cancer. Before the zombie apocalypse happened, they told her she had 6 months to live, but now she's going on 3 years, so she's kind of a miracle child. She has a nurse with her who's an older black woman named Lily, and she used to be a veterinarian, but in the zombie apocalypse, she started doing medicine on humans and used her medical knowledge to help humans. So she's kind of along the ride with Kayla as like her personal nurse. And this is like one of the only black characters we get to see in the whole entire book, by the way. And she's written well. She's barely in it, so there was not much to complain about. I mention this because there is things to complain about certain other types of characters later, which you will hear. So also in this group is Kayla's dad. He's like 58 years old, you know, not that old, but he's very grizzled. He's the way he's written, he sounds like much older than he is. And there's also
his new girlfriend, who's like maybe 22, and she's like a dolled up trollop, heavy makeup, even in the zombie apocalypse. She's only there to like sex her way into safety. It's very slut-shamey. And then there's this guy that they found along the way, and they invited him into their group, whose name is Abner. They call him Ebby for short. And he is very large. He is a very fat person. And, you know, we mentioned earlier that, like, oh, people, how could they be so large during the zombie apocalypse? What are they eating? And you find out later a lot of them are eating humans. A lot of them are cannibals, like the guy that Coburn kills at the beginning. He was a cannibal, and that's how he had such a big belly. But Abner isn't a cannibal. He was just a big guy to start with. So all the descriptions of him are very fat-shamey and very, like, derogatory to fat people. And they're from the points of view of the characters. So these are the kinds of people that would be derogatory to fat people. It's realistic. But we never get to see any character who's not that way. So it kind of comes off that the author thinks that's an appropriate way to treat fat people. And that's a bit of an icky thing in this book. Oh, one of the things earlier, when Coburn was escaping the zombies before he found the cannibal and ate him, when he gets attacked by the zombies, one of them bites him, and she like eats some of his vampire flesh, and then that vampire blood in her starts changing her, and she starts mutating into like a super zombie, which he doesn't really see. But when he's describing her, he calls her a hausfrau. She's like a housewife with a pink bathrobe. And he's very, you know, derogatory towards the way he describes all the people he's seeing. Everyone is described with an insult. So he's shaming her for being a housewife, I guess, for, you know, having the audacity to die in a bathrobe with curlers in her hair. Everyone is less cool than him. But she winds up being along for the ride because she's this mutated super zombie, and she's kind of one of the biggest threats in the book. And the way she's described goes from being a hausfrau to like zombie bitch. You know, it's always something misogynist with the way he describes her, which is in character for him, but it wasn't fun to read. And you don't know if that's like the author's point of view or the character's point of view. Like, it got pretty blurry at times. I don't know enough about this author's other works to know how he writes fat people or women or, you know, sexual people or any of the other things he derogatories in the book. Can't say. So when Coburn is looking for food, Abner, the big guy, goes out to pee because they have this RV, and it's a diesel RV, which they're very lucky to have because regular gas expires and only diesel doesn't expire. So any vehicles that you can drive in the zombie apocalypse have to be a diesel vehicle. So they got this diesel RV, and they're just kind of like trekking around the country. We find out their goals later. But they stop for a night, and Abner goes out to pee in the woods, and Coburn attacks him. And he's drinking his blood, and he's going on and on about how good the blood tastes because he's so fat, and fat people taste better because fat flavors what it's very icky. But then Gil, the grizzled old dad, and the other guys come out with a shotgun. They shoot Coburn. They have kind of a standoff. He winds up dropping Ebby, and, you know, he winds up living. Okay, so the fact that his name is Abner, and the fact that Gil is so grizzled, and the way a lot of other things are described is very much not the way you would see people or hear people being named in 2009. These people were like redneck yokels from 1960s TV shows, kind of. And, you know, Coburn is from that time, so him describing people that way works. But that they actually are that way does not feel realistic for people from 2009. They're written like Beverly Hillbilly, backwoods rednecks, like little town on the prairie kind of people, and they're just like in New Jersey and Manhattan. Like, it doesn't work. And I don't know if that's just this author being older and a bit out of touch, or if he just sort of had the style in his mind of this older sort of quaint Americana thing that just doesn't really exist anymore, yet somehow comes back in the zombie apocalypse. I don't know how old the author is. He's older than I am. I know that. I don't know anything about his backstory. It doesn't say much in his author bio. He's very public online, so you could probably find out more about him if you went looking for it. But yeah, that was one thing I didn't like about this book. It just felt unrealistic how like hokey and like podunky it was. And there are people like that, still like that out in America, very like banjo overalls, stalk of straw in their teeth kind of characters. But that was like everyone in the whole book was this kind of like old Americana stereotype that just didn't feel like a 2009 situation at all. So they have this standoff. They figure out he's a vampire. First they think he's a zombie, they don't know what's going on. So Kayla, the spunky, gifted teenager with the heart of gold, comes out and she takes Coburn away, and she wants to strike a deal with him. She's like, look, if you protect us, we can lead you to food. You're the last vampire in the world. It's got to be tough for you out there. Think long term. And he's just like, no, I want to eat you now. It seemed really weird that the whole entire premise of the book, that a vampire is going to be a shepherd to humans to protect his food supply, which is what reminded me of my book, came from the human and not from the vampire who would have needed that. And he resists it at first. He's like, no, that's a stupid idea. I just want to kill you all now, and I'm going to eat you all now. And she's like, no, use your head, think. So she convinces him of this. And he's like, fine, maybe I'll do this. And then he thinks about double-crossing them, and it kind of takes a give and take for a while before they eventually do strike this agreement that, yes, he is going to stay with them as their protector if they lead him to food or let him drink off them, because he doesn't have to kill people to drink blood. So he can drink off them for a while. But they would prefer that. So they tell him that their plan is to go west because ultimately we find out Kayla's cancer blood, her magical blood, that also gives her visions and lets her see the future in her dreams. So she's seen this in a vision. Makes her immune to zombie bites. And her blood can cure zombie bites. So Lily had been bitten by a zombie before, and she let Lily drink some of her blood, and Lily didn't turn into a zombie. She did still have the bite. She didn't heal, but Kayla, when she gets bitten by a zombie, she completely heals. So something's magical about her blood, and she's the only person in the world like this. So her whole family's like, we must protect the magical teenager and take her to Los Angeles on the opposite side of the country where they're working on a cure. Okay, pause. In my book, it's very similar. But they start in Los Angeles, and they have to get to New York City, where they're working on a cure, and it's also a road trip novel. And it's like the very same, like, we've got to cross the whole country on a road trip to get to where they're working on a cure. They don't get there till book 3 in my book. Yeah. So, same goal, and Coburn's like, I don't really care about your cure. I don't really care about any of this, but I'll go along for the ride. So their big problem is, in order to get through Pennsylvania, there's like a border set up of cannibals that have, just stations where they're blocking off every major highway. So everyone who tries to go west has to get through these cannibals, and the cannibals will just like catch them and add them to their livestock and eat them. And there's no way to get past. So they're hoping the vampire can help them get past the cannibals, and then, they'll take it from there. And they're like, you can also eat these cannibals. It's a win for you. So they start the road trip. He still has his dog with him, and he's like, I'm still going to keep this dog because I might eat it later. He has altercations with the people in the RV. Cecilia, the slutty one, doesn't like him. Gil, the dad, doesn't like him. Abner is kind of cool, even though Coburn's really mean and fat-shaming to him. And Kayla kind of has like a hero worship kind of crush on him, which she gets over pretty quickly. But she's into it at first because she's seen him in her dreams. And they do wind up having shared dreams later on down the line. You don't think we ever get an explanation on why Kayla is magical? No, we don't. I assumed it was something to do with the cancer. Like the way we find out zombies started was they were experimenting on blood cells, and they combined the blood with the bacteria, and then the bacteria spread it like a disease. So maybe it's something in her cancer blood. The blood cells negates that disease. Now, you don't really have to know these things. They aren't that important. What's important is the journey and the friends we made along the way. So they get to the cannibal station. I guess they pick one, and that's the one they're going to go through. And they have like spike strips on the road, so the RV can't get past. So they're like, okay, Coburn, you go in and distract the cannibals so they're all focused on you or something. And we'll like peel back the spike strips, drive our RV through, get past the cannibal station, and then you come meet up with us later. And the cannibal station is a giant Walmart because, that has everything. And so Coburn's like, okay, I'll do this plan. So he goes into Walmart and he's like, this is going to be super easy, easy peasy. He's very cocky and overconfident, and he tells us like this gets him into trouble most of the time. And it really does. So instead of being like cautious and careful and like picking off the cannibals easily and then like making the distraction, which is supposed to be like a big explosion, he's cocky and he starts fighting them, and then they get the upper hand on him, and a guy in a wheelchair blows off both of his legs below the knee. And they capture him and they're like, you will become one of our cannibal dinners. We will eat your meat, because they think he's human. And like when he's in there, he sees all the carcasses of humans. Very gory, very visceral, very descriptive. A lot of gore in this book. A lot of really gross stuff. Like blood, guts, splattering. And like meanwhile, during all this, we keep cutting back to the super zombie in the pink bathrobe and like what she's up to and how she's chasing them. Getting that point of view. So in the cannibal Walmart, he gets caught. He keeps trying to like escape. He's very kind of nonchalant about it. He's not freaking out. He's such a cool guy, you know. He's not gonna, even though he is in shit, like he is in over his head. So they stuff him in a doggy kennel and they take him up to the roof, which is where they have the spigot where they like roast the humans like luau pigs. And up there is the cannibal queen. Her name is Ambrosia. Not really, but that's like her cannibal queen name. And she is an 800-pound person who cannot walk. She like sits and things are brought to her. And again, a very fat shamey. We get her point of view at some points, and she's just like, food, 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 because apparently all fat people think about all the time is food. I mean, I get that people thinking about food during a zombie apocalypse is a thing, but we really only get it from the fat people point of view. And like a lot of the characters don't eat in this. Like there's parts in the book where people are throwing up and they're only throwing up stomach bile because they have no food in their system. And I'm like, how are they surviving so long without eating anything? So the cannibals are all like assholes, and they're like, we're gonna eat you. And any like person who tries to come through cannibal Walmart, they just want to eat, because apparently they've lost all sense of humanity, all sense of caring about their fellow man for the sake of eating them. They have no moral code. They're just eat. I guess they don't eat any vegetables. They just eat people. They must all be really constipated. There's no food or anything in the Walmart, but it's the kind of Walmart that has like a gun section and a weapons section, so they're all really armed. So they take Coburn up to the roof, and he hasn't been able to do the distraction for them to get through. He was looking for their fuel reserves so he could blow them up, and he's like, well, the sun's about to come up, and even if they don't eat me before then or cook me on a spigot, I'm gonna like fry up in the sun, so I don't know what it's gonna do. So when he's up on the roof, he tries to there's two other people up there with him. It's kind of Jesus-y, like the two other people on the cross next to him. And one of them's this kid who's like clean cut and like pretty. One of them is this like old, like, just someone who's like the opposite of that. So Coburn pretends to have a key that he wants to like get the old guy to come to him so he can bite his tongue and get blood back so he can regenerate his limbs. But it doesn't work. But they do take him out of the dog kennel, and they're about to take him to the spit to roast him. But even though he has no legs and they're kind of carrying him like this when he's just like a torso hanging, he does wind up being able to bite someone and steal his gun, and then he shoots the fuel reserves, and there's a huge explosion. And then Kayla and her RV family are like, great, now we can get through. But sun comes up and Coburn is done for. And as far as we know, this could kill him. We don't know what's going to happen or how he's going to get out of this scrape. So we cut back to the family. They get through the cannibal Walmart. They pull up the spikes. It's very harrowing because there's so many zombies, because the explosion has drawn all the zombies. Zombies are completely mindless in this book. They're only attracted to light and sound and movement. So the cannibal Walmart had a moat around it that was filled with shrapnel and broken glass, but there's so many zombies falling into the moat that they kind of fill it up, and then all the other zombies climb over. So now the cannibal Walmart is invaded by zombies, and they have to spend all day fighting them. So as Kayla's family gets through the cannibal Walmart and escapes, they were supposed to stop about half a mile down the road and wait for Coburn until nightfall. But Kayla's dad is like, no, we're not doing that. We're going to keep going. So they do, and Kayla's very upset about this because she's like, no, we made a promise. We had a plan. And Dad's like, nope, we're getting away from the scary vampire who wants to eat us all. So they keep driving. So when Coburn wakes up at sunset, he is being eaten by Ambrosia, who we're kind of in her point of view at first, and she's talking about how she's like cutting off pieces of his guts and eating them, and how great he is because the sun roasted him on the outside, but he's like sashimi on the inside, and she's just glorying in how delicious he is. But he's come back into consciousness, and he's still awake in this like burned up torso hunk of a body. The only thing that isn't burned is his tongue and his eyes and his teeth. So she sees that his tongue is still pink, and then she like goes to bite his tongue because she wants to eat it. So then he bites her tongue, and he starts drinking her blood, and then he starts eating her face, and he like burrows all the way into her body because she's just that fat that he can burrow into her body. He starts eating her from the inside, drinking her blood, regrows his limbs, and then he like explodes out of her, fully formed, naked, covered in blood, but with his hands and feet back and completely healed. And the guy that originally shot him, the guy in the wheelchair, is there. He was Ambrosia's grandpa. He's very pissed. They fight again. He busts his wheelchair and gets away. He goes down and he kills a bunch of cannibals. He has a smorgasbord. He tries to get some clothes. He gets his jacket back that someone stole. His jacket's full of bullet holes by now. But he gets his jacket back. He steals someone's pants, but he can't find any shoes. Apparently, they're all too big or too small. I don't know why too big was a problem. Like, just wear the shoes that are too big. No. So he's running on barefoot. And he doesn't know how to get out of there because the place is completely surrounded by zombies. There's a motorbike, but he can't drive because he lived in Manhattan. He was a Manhattan guy. When you live in Manhattan, you don't drive. He can't even drive a motorcycle. He can't drive a car. He does not know how to drive. So he goes back up to the roof, and the other kid, the clean-cut kid, is still in his doggy kennel. And so he pulls him out, and he's like, "Run, kid, flee. I'm doing a good deed for once." And the kid just doesn't go. He cannot talk. This person is mute. It's kind of like the protagonist in The Shape of Water. He can hear, but he cannot speak. And so he shows Coburn where the motorcycle is, and Coburn makes him drive. So they drive, they get through the zombies, they get free, and he goes to where the RV is supposed to be, and it's not there. And he's like, "They left me, and they stole my dog when they left me. Betrayal!" And it's like, oh, you really do care about this dog. I'm starting to like you now, because this is what we should have seen at the beginning of the book. So they chase the RV because he could smell it on the wind. Meanwhile, we keep cutting back to the bathrobe lady and the other like super zombie she has created by now, because she gave some of her like blood to another zombie and he turned into a super zombie. So now there's two of them that have completely morphed into these like giant spiky dragon rows of shark teeth, like double jointed elbows and knees to like run fast with claws on their hands and legs like dinosaurs. Very creepy super zombies. And she's chasing him because she wants more of Coburn. She wants to eat this blood that transforms her to keep transforming her. This is like, she can kind of think, unlike other zombies, she can have a goal. She's a little bit smart. She can mobilize, and all the other zombies followed her. Oh yeah, Coburn did throw the R slur at the kid. Like he uses the R slur. He uses a lot of like other things. He's a very bad guy. And, you know, it comes a point in a book where you're like, I'm writing a really awful character who's going to do a racism, or he's going to do a homophobia, or he's going to do like some really like awful stuff because he's such a bad guy, even if it was a villain and not our like anti-hero. There comes a point in a book where it's just like, but does he have to? Like, you can make a guy bad without perpetuating some really awful slurs and ideas and understandings as a responsible author. I'm not talking about like censorship or anything, but it's just like, does it really have to? Did you really have to do that? Were you just using this awful character you wrote as an excuse to use slurs, racial slurs, homophobic slurs, ableism slurs? Were you? I don't know. There are better ways. You know, it's just about, you know, how you want to put art into the world, I guess. And why you're doing it. Is it an excuse, or is it, I won't say like innocent? Like, it was a choice he made. This was written in 2000. Well, it came out in 2011, so I'm guessing it was written in 2009 or maybe 10 if he's a super fast writer. You know, we weren't as woke as we are now back then, but it wasn't that long ago. Like, we knew some things back then. So he tracks down the RV. When he finds it, It's overturned on the road, and he's like, and the people are gone. There's some zombies trapped under it, but they're still kicking, and some zombies around it. He kills the zombies around it, and he's like, well, they're gone. They stole my dog. I'm mad that they betrayed me. We had a deal, and I went through all that for them. I got eaten for them. I almost gave my life for them. I did not know I was going to survive, but instead of trying to escape, I blew up those fuel barrels, created the distraction they needed. I made that choice to help them instead of helping myself. And I don't do that very often, and that means something. And how dare they betray me after I did this gracious, generous thing. So you could tell he's his character's developing a little. He's starting to become a little more sympathetic, a little more humane. But he doesn't like it because he's such a badass. So he tells the kid, who he calls Ginger, because I guess he has red hair and can't talk. His real name is Danny, which we find out later. So he tells the kid to leave. Take your motorcycle and leave. Don't stick around me. I'm on my own. And the kid's just like, nope, I'm not going to leave. I'm going to stay here. He was like, but why? And so the kid is just not giving reasons or anything. He can't talk. He's just kind of like, I'm going to stay here. And he's being really soft about it, which is why Coburn questions his intelligence. But he eventually scares the kid off. He tells he's going to kill him if he does it, and he beats him up a bit. So scares the kid off. He takes a motorbike and he leaves. So Coburn goes, he sleeps for the day. And because it's almost sunrise by then. And he has dreams, and in his dreams there's a girl that looks like Kayla, but Kayla is also dream walking, and she's literally in his dreams, and she sees this girl who looks like her, and he doesn't know who the girl is. We eventually find out these are memories of a girl from his past, which is very significant. So when he wakes up, the kid is back. The kid is still there, and he's like, why are you still here? But by then he's figured out that Kayla and her family are in a farmhouse nearby that's surrounded by zombies, and he's got to go in and bust them out because he wants his dog back, and he's mad that they betrayed him, but he wants his dog. And so he gets the kid to help him because the kid stayed for some reason. Stupid kid being all noble and heroic and stuff. So they do this plan with attack with the motorbike and a fire and to distract the zombies. And Coburn's out fighting the zombies. Well, the kid takes the RV and he drives the RV because he can drive and Coburn can't. So he drives the RV up through the zombie-infested driveway. And the family, which had been in there, and we were in their point of view, seeing how they thought this was the end of the world for them. We also find out that Lily got bitten again, but this time the zombie ripped out her Achilles tendon when he bit her. So Kayla gave her some blood so she doesn't turn into a zombie. But she's now can't walk. Now her foot doesn't work. And there's some ableism here too, they call her a cripple and stuff. But so the kid comes in with the RV, they jump into the RV, they rescue him. Meanwhile, Coburn's out in the woods fighting, and the super scary, awful zombie catches up to him. And they get enough of bites out of him to wind up making 2 more super zombies. I'm not sure if this happens here or later at some point. So it's really hard for him because, again, he gets cocky. He's leading a herd of zombies away, and they just walk really slowly. He's like, I'm bored. So he kind of goes into the herd to start messing with them, and then they kind of surround him. He's like, oh shit, I did this again. He gets eaten again. So he gets away from that. He escapes. He gets back to the RV. The RV is kind of dashing away. And he jumps on it just as the zombies are about to get in, and he stops them, and he goes into the RV, swoops in through the window like a badass. And Gil's there with his gun, that's the dad, and he punches him. And he fights, and he's like, you guys left me, and Kayla's like, I told them not to. And he's like, I don't believe you. And they have kind of a showdown, and Gil's like, I shouldn't have left you. You're right. That was a bad choice. I made that choice because you're a vampire and you might want to eat us, but I'm glad you saved us. Thank you for saving us. Coburn's like, okay, no hard feelings. We're going to go back to our original arrangement. I'll be your shepherd. You'll be my cows. And then he breaks Gil's trigger fingers as punishment, which is kind of stupid because if he wants his cows to stay alive, why would you break his trigger fingers? He was breaking his fingers to kind of humble him as a punishment for stealing his dog and leaving him. So now they're all one happy family again, road tripping across America, trying to get out west. And now Danny is with them, and Kayla and Danny kind of start developing a romance. She's a teenager. It's unclear how old he is. They call him a kid, but apparently it's an appropriate age for her to be into him. And he's just a total sweetheart, completely no flaws, just sweet. So they're road tripping. They'd gotten through the cannibal line of defense. Now they're going across America, and they're going to go down Route 66 because they've been told that, you know, if they go west this way, if they get out to LA, there's a building with the cure and everything. So they're going down Route 66, and they get to a giant wall, like the Great Wall of China, just blocking Route 66 and like all the surrounding environs. It goes on for miles in either directions. It's surrounding a very large area, which we find out is multiple states at one point. And they don't know how to get through this wall, but they realize there's a gate there. And so Coburn strongly gets open the gate, but then a vehicle comes out with 3 guys in it, and they're like, "Halt, who goes there?" And Coburn hides. And the humans are like, we're just passing through. Can we get through? And they're like, "Are you cannibals? Are you here to steal our stuff?" And they're like, nope. He's like, "Well, what do you have in the bags?" And she's like, "Stuff, supplies." Oh, right. So before they got this, the RV died at some point along the way, and they had to abandon it. And they were going on foot, trying to get to this town. And before they got to the giant wall, they passed through a town that had been completely gutted, and they started seeing signs of this like gang, this mob, like tagging everywhere. And when they find out the town was gutted because they used like all the pipes from all the houses to build their wall. So this city, or it's called the 66 States because it's on Route 66, and it's kind of south of, it's like in Oklahoma, right? But I don't know if it includes like more than Oklahoma. It's very large. It is run by a king named Thuglo, who is a super fan, like a super nerd fan of Insane Clown Posse. So he has designed his entire kingdom around Insane Clown Posse, and he gives all of his minions like white rapper names, and they all wear clown makeup, and it's kind of like a Batman villain, neon sign, motorbike, squealing clown makeup situation. It's very cheesy. And this part, once it started getting here, is written comedically, but still scary because these guys have guns and they're going to kill them. The writing here kind of reminded me of Christopher Moore a little bit. It was funny in that kind of way, like serious yet still silly at the same time. So they take them inside, and Coburn's disappeared, and Kayla's like, "He betrayed us again, he's gone." Really, we find out he follows them and he's looking after them. So they take them inside, and they drive them for a long time till they get to the king's castle, which is an Air Force base. And this Air Force base is why they were able to have this prospering walled city, because the Air Force base had weapons, it had fuel, it had rations, it had everything they need. It has generators and electricity. We get to the king's headquarters, and it's covered in neon signs, a very early 90s Batman villain style. Very silly. They meet the king, and he's just like some stoner guy, like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, playing pinball machines. And they tell him that, they're just passing through. They want to get through to the other side. They're going out west. And he's like, "No, you're here now. You're perfectly good people. Why would I let you go through? You're going to stay here." And he kind of gives them jobs. So he tells Lily she can go be a medic. And he tells Gil that he's going to be like on a patrol force. And he tells... he doesn't say anything about Danny, really. Like, Danny, it almost seemed like the author kept forgetting Danny was there, because a lot of times he'd be like, name all the other characters and not mention Danny, and then all of a sudden he'll be there again. But he says that Cecilia and Kayla are going to be whores. And then Gil is like, "Oh, hell no," and he starts a fight, and he gets really beat up. Like, face turns into hamburger, beat up. So by now it's sun up, and there's still no sign of Coburn. So they take them to this motel on Route 66, like a very seedy motel. And Kayla and Cecilia are stuck in a room waiting to be turned into whores. And Kayla's really upset about this because, she's just a kid. She has zero sexual experience. But Cecilia, who's been sleeping with Gil all this time, is like, being a whore wouldn't be that bad. It's kind of a cushy gig, and, they'll take care of us, and all we have to do is make the men happy. And Kayla is very slut-shamey with her about this. She's just like, "Oh, were you like a prostitute before the apocalypse?" And she's like, "We called ourselves escorts," and then completely sex worker shamey with Cecilia. And Cecilia is just written as this awful, horrible, bitchy character who's just mean to everyone and doesn't like other women. And so it's like the sex worker shame, check that box as well. Meanwhile, Gil has been sentenced to death because he fought back. So they're going to, the way they kill people is they put a grenade in your mouth and they take turns shooting you, and whoever sets off the grenade wins. So he's like, well, I gotta escape this, otherwise, I'm gonna die and my daughter's gonna be whored out. So he makes an escape attempt. It's marginally successful, not really. He's up against this really roided out, big tough guy, and he's fighting, and he eventually gets the upper hand, and he does escape. And then night falls, and then Coburn shows up, and Coburn's like, he's over by where the king is. And Coburn goes to the king, and he's like, where are my friends? What's going on? And the king kind of tells him, because Coburn intimidates him into it. But meanwhile, while all this is going on, at the wall perimeter, the super zombies have caught up. So now there's 4 super zombies, and all the other regular zombies are following them. So they've led this giant horde of zombies to the wall. And the super zombies can just jump over the wall. And so they come in and they start tearing shit up. Meanwhile, also, there's another settlement that we've been hearing about along the way called the Sons of Man, which is this religious cult, very Jesus-y religious cult that thinks that the zombie apocalypse is a sign from God that the world is being cleansed and they are the pure ones and they're going to cleanse the world. And we had learned previously that Coburn, the reason he was in the ground was because the Sons of Men used to be vampire hunters before the zombie apocalypse happened, and they caught him and trapped him in here, exploded this movie theater, it fell down on top of him, and that's why he was in the ground for 5 years. So he really hates those guys. There's the one who took his middle finger when he flipped them off. And so the leader of this Sons of Man, his Brickett or something is his name, he's also coming down to invade the 66 states because they want their land, they want their Air Force base, they want their fuel. They tried to join with them, but the Stoner King was like, no, man. So they're about to attack, and just as they get there to attack, the super zombies are also attacking, so it's kind of like chaos from all sides. Coburn's trying to find his friends to rescue them again. Kayla's really upset. She thinks he abandoned them. It turns out he was under the car the whole time. He didn't abandon them. He gets his dog back because the king stole his dog. He's trying to find some shoes because he's running around barefoot all the time. So it's this big old showdown. He gets the friends. Turns out the king's a helicopter pilot, even though he's a stoner. So he gets the king to agree to fly the helicopter out. Lots of fighting, lots of blood, lots of gore, lots of viscera being torn apart, very gory descriptions of people dying. But they all get to the helicopter eventually, except for Coburn. He's back there fighting the zombies. The super zombies have found him. They're attacking him. And they're all waiting at the helicopter to go. And Lily steals 2 grenades. And she's at this point gone full vision. Everything is zen. Very the magical Negro stereotype. As the only black character in there, she's starting to have I know I have a vision that everything will be fine. In order to do it, I have to sacrifice myself. So she takes these grenades and she goes back to rescue Coburn by drawing the 4 super zombies to her and then pulling the pin in the grenade and sacrificing herself and exploding them. And that's how Coburn escapes. So she sacrificed herself, and everyone's very sad because Lily was this really nice person. 0 flaws, absolutely 0 flaws, because, she's a black woman and this white male author can't give her flaws. So he gets on the helicopter, they're escaping, but the Sons of Man have realized he's there, and they're like, that guy, we buried him 5 years ago. And the leader, has a personal vendetta. So the 66 states kingdom is completely ripped asunder. All the zombies have come, and the Sons of Man are there with their tanks, so they're fine. So they shoot at the helicopter, and the helicopter gets shot down. He shoots at the fuel tank, so it has to make a landing. It lands somewhere out in Texas. And at this point, the sun is rising, and they've wrapped Coburn up in blankets. And at this point, he has a dream. And he's dreaming about his past. In his past, there's the girl who looks like Kayla in the dream, and he sort of start hinting that this was a girl he cared about. So my assumption is like, oh, she's his daughter or something from the past life he can't remember. And then jumps to another dream, and then jumps to another dream. And then he seems to wake up. And when he wakes up, he's like out of the helicopter, but everyone else is out too, the whole family and the Bong King, and they're all dead. And he realizes that while he was recovering himself, he went into a vampire frenzy and he ate them all and he destroyed them all. And it's just like, he's so upset with himself. He's so devastated that his vampire instincts did that. And then the Sons of Man catch up to him. They capture him. They put him in a truck. They got these moving vans where they can like drive and have a bunch of stuff going on, and they start electrocuting him because a taser was how they took him down the first time, so they know that electrocution works on a vampire, but they're keeping him alive. He doesn't know what's going on, but eventually he like gets the realization that, wait, I'm really, really hungry. If I'm this hungry, I couldn't have killed them all. I don't think I did kill them all. And then he's like, surprise, you didn't kill them all. That was another dream. The way it was paragraphed on the page made it seem like it wasn't, but it was. So then we cut back to Kayla, now that we know she's still alive, and she's been kidnapped by the Sons of Man too. She's told them, she and her family have told them about her special blood, that they want to go out west, and the Sons of Man are like, oh, okay, cool. We too want to save the world with our Jesus. We'll take you there. We won't, this is great. We will band together. We are humans. We took your vampire and we're like torturing him, but you didn't really care about that guy anyway. Right? So Kayla and her family think that they're okay. They're riding with the Sons of Man to LA. Meanwhile, one of the super zombies, the main super zombie in the pink bathrobe, didn't die. She wakes up and eats all of her like dead other super zombies, which turns her into an even more super zombie, and she gets the strength. And then she realizes that she can make more super zombies by ripping off parts of her body, feeding it to them, and then that part will grow back, and she just can keep doing this. And of course, the thing she rips off is one of her boobs. Yeah, there's like some weird boob stuff in this. So she rips off her tit, feeds it to someone, it grows back, rips it off again, feeds it to someone, and she creates an entire army of super zombies. But because Coburn escaped in the helicopter, she lost the scent, she lost the trail, so they don't know where to go. So time goes by, they road trip out to LA, they get to LA, and Coburn's still being tortured and being electrocuted, trapped in this van, still like starving to death, almost ready to go back into ground for a death sleep. Meanwhile, Kayla and family are taken by the Sons of Man. She has like a weird feeling about it, so she doesn't tell them where the lab is, where the cure is being, until they get there. She keeps that information close, just because she has a weird feeling. And we also find out during this time, when Coburn has more dreams, a dream sequence, we finally understand like what happened, who the girl is in his dreams, and his whole tragic backstory. So he's dreaming about the guy who made him a vampire, who's blonde, so he calls him Blondie. That's all he knows. He has like a really scarred up face. And in the dream, he sees Blondie come in through the window of his house in the 1960s and attack his daughter and kill her. And then like the blonde guy in his memories, in his dream sequence, he's like, no, that's not how it really happened. Look inside yourself and see again what really happened. So he looks inside himself, he sees again, and this time in the dream, Blondie comes in the window, attacks him, the dad, and he remembers his name now. Yeah, his name is John. It's a great name. So basic. And he attacks the dad, and then when he becomes a vampire, he turns him into a vampire, he loses his sense of self. He loses his mind, he forgets who he is. Basically, he's become a zombie, but vampire-wise instead of zombie-wise, but brain-wise doesn't remember who he is. And Blondie has taken the daughter and tied her up, and then he shows her to Coburn, and she's Coburn's first meal, and he kills his own daughter, and that's his like tragic backstory memory. All comes back to him. And he's like, maybe the reason I was attracted to Kayla and her plight to start with was because she reminded me of my daughter, because apparently they looked exactly like. Coincidence? It's a very common vampire trope. It happens. So now he's got a new mission, and he's realized that the important thing was the friends we made along the way, and now he has a conscience, and now he has like actual sympathetic motivation, and he wants to go and help Kayla and rescue her, because he realized the Sons of Man have some ulterior motives. There's something fishy going on. They're not really trying to help Kayla. So Kayla leads them to the building where the cure is supposedly being worked on by laboratory people. And meanwhile, her cancer is getting worse and worse. Like, she is really fading from the cancer. She can barely breathe. She can barely walk. Her left hand is gone numb. Her nose keeps bleeding. So she's cancer-wise not long for this world. So they get to the building, and it's 37 flights up the stairs. And they're like, can you make it? Should we carry you? And she's like, no, I have pride. I'm going to walk all 37 steps by myself. So they go up the stairs. And at one point, Abner, because he's fat, can't keep walking. He makes it 15 stairs. He's like, I'm real proud of myself. I made it this far, but I need a break. So the leader of the Sons of Man keeps one of his cronies down there with, okay, you stick with Abner, and the rest of us are going to go up to the top. So they get up to the top of the stairs and find the laboratory, and there's a camera there, and the camera, like, someone on the other side of the camera is like, we don't have a cure, go away, we can't help you. And they're like, no, look at her, she's magical, she has magic blood, you could use her blood to make more cures. And they're like, nope, go away, bye. So the leader of the Sons of Man blows up the door. But before he does that, he has his crony take Kayla into another room and hold her hostage with a gun. And the guy in the stairs with Abner shoots and kills Abner. And he's got Gil and Danny and Cecilia with him, though Danny also, again, conveniently disappears for a while. He's just like, where did Danny go? Why is he not being mentioned? So he's about to shoot Gil, and Cecilia just, like, stands in front of Gil, and she's like, you're gonna have to shoot me first. And he's like, okay. And he shoots her. And now Cecilia's dead, too. Just as she was starting to become a decent person from the slutty hoe she used to be, she was finally becoming, like, not slut-shamey. And Gil gets shot too, but he, like, grabs a gun and he gets away and he fights for his life. And meanwhile, the army guys get in through the door, the laboratory's there, and we find out what they really wanted wasn't to get the cure, but to destroy the cure, because they believe that God sent the plague to destroy all of humanity, to like Noah's Ark flood, kill all the sinners, and then only the pure of heart will rebuild the earth after. So they don't want to cure the plague. They want the plague to keep going. And also, it's been revealed to Coburn during this time that the way the plague started was because the guy who hacked off his middle finger took it and gave it to his scientist buddy. He was like, here's a vampire's DNA, do some experiments with it, figure it out. And the scientist buddy somehow made the zombie bacteria with that vampire finger, which spread and started the zombie apocalypse. So it's kind of Coburn's fault that we have the zombie apocalypse. And the zombie apocalypse being tied to vampire blood is also something that was similar to my book, and I'm just like, God. So Coburn now feels kind of guilty about this, but he's gone through all this. He's become a good guy. Now he's putting others before himself, even though he's still like potty mouthed, trashy, like dickwad. And in the room where the crony has taken Kayla, who the leader of the Sons of Man doesn't want to kill because, like, she does have magical blood. We do want to keep it because we can use her to cure my people, the only people who deserve to live. We're not going to let the scientists have her, but I will keep this cure, and we can feed her blood to anyone who gets bitten, and we'll be okay. So she starts fighting against the crony that has her. She finds a letter opener. She stabs her. It's like girl fight, because girls can only fight each other in stories like this. They always pair them off for the fight scenes. Kills her, and then she goes back out. She finds her dad. They go into the laboratory, and the Sons of Man have been like slaughtering everyone in the whole laboratory. Everyone's dead. All the scientists are dead. But then Coburn shows up finally, and he's like, because he escaped. He escaped the truck where he was being held captive by tricking the guy who was holding him captive into like retying his shoelace, and he bites him and he gets his blood back. And I don't know why he didn't do that like 10 days ago, but he does it now. So he escapes, he gets up the 37 steps, he rescues Gil and Kayla, or he's trying, like, Danny's still alive, and then all of a sudden Danny comes out of nowhere, and he jumps in front of Kayla and saves her life, and then he gets shot, and he dies. And then Coburn shows up just in time to have his big final showdown with the head of the Sons of Man, his mortal nemesis. He wins, he kills that guy, he, like, rips his head off without ripping the skin, so it's like an internal decapitation. It's very cool. And so it's just Gil and his daughter, and Coburn left, and they're like, what are we going to do? All our hopes, this laboratory's been destroyed. We came all the way out here. We don't know where to go. We've killed all the bad guys. But they hear on the wind the coming of these super zombies, the giant horde of super zombies. And there was one point earlier when Coburn was feeling like really depressed. He realized he had a psychic link with the super zombies because they're basically like his vampire fledglings. And he had seen in his dream sequence that his vampire sire was like, I'm still alive, because if I were dead, you would be dead, because you killed the head vampire, all of his fledgling sires, very lost boys. So that's how he gets the idea that these super zombies are his vampire fledglings. And if he dies, they will all die. So there's this final showdown where he wants Kayla to kill him because he knows he can't kill himself because he's got this like evil voice inside his head through this whole time that's like his bastard side. So Kayla has to kill him. And if she kills the head vampire, all of the super zombies will die. And this is big final showdown. And finally, like, she does it. She kills him. She shoots him through the head because headshots are the only way to kill vampires or zombies. And he dies. And that was very much foreshadowed. I saw that coming along my way. And then all the super zombies who have just made it up into there and we're about to fight them all die as well. But doesn't kill the regular zombies, which is what I thought was going to happen. I thought all the zombies in the whole world were going to die because they were all from Coburn's DNA. But no, because it wasn't like a direct feeding blood thing. They're all still out there, but the super zombies are dead. So it's just Kayla and Gil left. Everyone's dead around them. And Kayla's like, her cancer is cancering so hard. One of the scientists, right before she dies, she was like, there's another laboratory in San Francisco and it's our main laboratory. It's on a boat. This wasn't even the main one. Go there. Blah. She dies. And so Kayla's like, I can't make it to San Francisco. My cancer is too cancery. I can't make it. Those 37 flights of stairs, they killed me. And like her nose is bleeding. She's faint. She's falling, like dying. And Gil's like, okay, we're in a lab. I'm going to find you some medicine. Goes out looking for some medicine. And when he comes back to her after finding some, he sees the letter opener in her neck. Like her neck's been slit or spiked through with this letter opener, and all of her blood is draining into Coburn's dead mouth. Coburn is dead, like a headshot actually killed him. But her magical blood brings him back to life. And he's like, wow, how did that happen? So we know as the reader that he didn't do it, that she must have done it herself. Killed herself to bring him back to life. Because, she knew she was going to die anyway. But Gil doesn't know this. He thinks Coburn did it somehow. So then there's a showdown, there's a fight. But eventually Coburn convinces him that he didn't do it. Because Kayla, when she put her blood into him and killed herself to bring him back to life, her whole, psyche went into him. So now she lives inside his head as a second consciousness inside his, like a voice in his head. And he could talk to her, and they're like head besties now. And once he finally convinces Gil of this, they escape together. The dog is still alive. He's down there on the street. They gather up the dog. All the super zombies are gone, but the real zombies are out there. So Gil and Coburn and head Kayla and dog Cream Puff decide they're going to go up to San Francisco and find this boat and find the real cure and save the day. They have a plan now. The end. Then, of course, there is the sequel novella, which I started reading. I read the first 3 chapters or so, but I didn't finish reading it, where they do get to San Francisco and they're trying to find this cure. And Kayla as a character in his head is a thing. And I did not like that part, Kayla having to kill herself to keep our asshole vampire alive. I like that he sacrificed himself at the end. That definitely needed to happen. That was the very obvious arc that was going for here. I didn't like that she had to get killed off. Why couldn't her, magical blood save herself from her cancer? So now we're just, back down to the 2 men. There go all our female characters. And the dog, who's a boy. So there's a part in this book where the evil religious guy is taunting Coburn and telling Coburn how it's his fault that all the zombies are there because it was his DNA, even though, he didn't willingly get his fingers shot off and given to scientists. And he says something about how vampires traditionally can't see their own reflections, which obviously Coburn can. He's not that kind of magical, but the idea is very metaphorical. And he basically gives us the theme in the pages about how the vampire represents someone who can't see the monster in themselves. They can't see their own reflection. And like Coburn, when he became a vampire, all his memories of his past self were erased. The fact that he ate his own daughter is erased. He just became a killing machine. Much like a zombie, but slightly different. So the vampire here represents the monster we're unable to see in ourselves as humanity. And it's very much in this book that, like, during the zombie apocalypse, the real enemy is man. And, like, they go right out and say it. They're like, yes, this is a common cliche of zombie movie tropes. They have the meta-awareness of zombie awareness. And yes, the real enemy is man. The cannibals, the juggalos in the Insane Clown Posse kingdom, the Sons of Man, the weird religious people. So it's all those people out there think they are the right, think they're surviving. They can't see the monster within themselves. They can't see their own reflection. We, in the real world, reading this book, living in the horrible world we live in this society that's so awful to so many people, can't see the monster within ourselves for participating in this society, even though we want to improve it somewhat. So that inner delusion of ignoring our own monstrousness to focus on our own selfish needs is what the vampire represents here, which I thought was pretty cool. I like that metaphor. I didn't mind that it was completely spelled out for us in the book. It was fine. You know, you have a good point. I like that part. I did not like the way Coburn talked about people. I didn't mind that his voice could be funny at times. His narration was funny. I liked the author's sense of humor when it wasn't at the expense of, marginalized people. But, yeah, he had a redemption arc. So, the things about this book that are similar to mine are the fact that during the zombie apocalypse, the vampires are keeping a human herd of cattle in order to sustain themselves. But unlike this book where it's just one vampire and he's basically the only vampire in the world, in my book, The Company of Death, it's an entire society of vampires and its entire system, a way of life. Both books happen to take 2 years into the zombie apocalypse, where the vampires have had time to mobilize this herd system. But mine is in the ambiguous future. We've got a lot of sci-fi elements or robots that feel like people and that kind of stuff and technology that doesn't exist now, whereas this is very much in the present, very 2011. The cross-country road trip to find the cure, only they're going in the opposite direction than my people are going. The idea that the zombies are connected to the vampire, which I can't tell you about my book because that's not revealed until book 2. So I can't reveal that spoiler of how they're connected in my book, but they are. And the whole idea of undead, being undead, and like all the different ways you could be undead, but ultimately it's the same thing. Very similar. The one vampire joining the group of travelers is a thing that's the same as this, though my vampire is not that same kind of asshole. Like, he's kind of an asshole, but like not like a very gross asshole the way Coburn is. The parallels between fuel, like car fuel, and blood is like vampire fuel, and food as human fuel, those are the same in both books. That idea of like we all need fuel to drive us in one way or another, and our entire existence is dependent on fuel. Those are both like not spelled out, but like underlying in both books. Yeah, there's a lot that's similar. I could keep telling you, but some of it would be spoilers for books 2 and 3, which aren't out yet and you can't read. So this book, they get all the way across the country. They do the whole road trip. In my book, they just get started going across the country and they don't finish the whole road trip until book 3. So it's a much longer road trip. And also, like, there's things in this book that this book doesn't have. But they were similar. I'm glad I read it to see in what ways they were similar, in what ways they were different. The main difference between these two books is tone. My book is not as gross and disgusting and gritty and gory as this book. Like, there's blood and gore and fighting in my book. Both books have lots of guns, machine guns going off, explosions, bombs, grenades, but my book is, I would call it softer, maybe more feminine. I don't know. Maybe it's just the difference between, like, genders, this book being written by a non-binary person and this book being written by a very cis white man. More female characters. And the female characters aren't shamed for being whatever size they are. I did like that this book had a lot of body diversity in it, which is something that I needed to work on back when I was first beginning writing too. I would write a very much like, you watch a TV show and everyone's the same body type kind of thing. I just wish the body diversity wasn't shamed. Like, even the guy who's on steroids, so he's very big and beefy, he was being shamed for being, a steroid user. Everyone's body got shamed in this, unless they were, like, even the skinny ones, like Kayla, for being all cancery. Body diversity is good. Shame is bad. Yes, villainous, bad characters can do and say bad things, but it was to the point in this book that it felt like it was the author saying this is the thing that should be, or the way people do feel. And even if that's true, even if a lot of people in the world do think that fat people are disgusting or weak or, like, less of a person than a non-fat person, be like, did we really need more of that out there? Do we really need to read that? Granted, this book is 12 years old by now, and we have come a long way on the internet, in our internet, what's it called? Like, your over online experience when you just, like, basically live online, especially after a pandemic, right? Like, we all just got sucked into the internet and too online. Anyone who wasn't Coburn was shamed. Yeah. And, like, Coburn, he's not into himself, so he's not even like, yes, I am the epitome of body type and personality and grit. And there was a lot of things, like, where Gil, the father, he would start showing some sensitivity, some vulnerability, and Coburn would be like, man up, we don't need you to be a pussy pansy willow out here. Be more of a man. So even when a man was showing some kind of vulnerability or sensitivity, he got shamed by Coburn, the epic shamer. And we're supposed to like this guy by the end. The book tells us right in the back we're not going to like him, but we're supposed to like him by the end. We're supposed to be like, that guy's an asshole, but isn't he a cool asshole? That smugness, especially at the beginning of the book, I really didn't like. If anyone's read both books and wants to talk about the similarities, please do. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions. My book has a lot more supernatural stuff in it, with the Grim Reaper being a main character and embodiments of the four horsemen of the apocalypse and stuff. Whereas this book is a little more based in reality. If a vampire were to exist and his DNA were to spark the zombie apocalypse, basically everything else is not just very current, but very old-fashioned. Like, very Andy Griffith Show, old-fashioned like that. I don't think America was still really like that much in 2009. Maybe out in the middle of nowhere in the West, but this guy lives in Manhattan at the beginning, and it's still like, it starts off in Manhattan. Why are we on the Andy Griffith Show? All right, I've been talking for, look at the clock, an hour and 19 minutes, which, I love it when there's a lot to say about the book and I don't breeze through it. And I definitely skipped over tons of parts too. The whole reason I read this book was to compare it to my book. But other reasons to read this book was because it offered variety from the books we've been reading before about Dracula's brides, about self-loathing vampires. This was a very not self-loathing vampire. This was a very self-aggrandizing vampire, which is similar to the vampires in my book as well. But it was a refreshing read for a book club to have a vampire that's just, like, gritty and awful, and he's not mopey. He doesn't feel sorry for himself. And even when he's, like, got his legs chopped off and stuck in a doggy cage, he's still kind of like quirky and funny about it and not just like feeling bad. He doesn't feel bad about eating people. There is a part where he's going out to eat someone and he finds a guy in a house asleep. And he's about like, yes, meat, and he's about to eat it, but then he hears Kayla's voice in his head like a conscience saying, you can't just kill innocent people. Drink a little bit and just let him live. So Coburn's like, I don't care, I just want to eat him. Why is this holding me back? So he walks around the house looking for reasons to kill this guy, and he finds out that he was addicted to child porn. And he's obviously a pedophile. So he goes back and he kills the sleeping guy. And he's like, yes, I have an excuse to kill you now. So now he's only going to kill evildoers, I guess. He's a reformed vampire. All right, I'm going to read the chat now. If you said something I missed and you want me to see it again, just post it again. I'm going to try to scroll up. Obviously, I won't see everything. You guys are pretty quiet tonight. Do we just have fewer people here? Fewer, but not that much fewer. I must have just been so fascinating with what I was saying. You see my Goodreads updates on Twitter to this day. Yes, I just finished the book today, which is why book club is today. I always have book club on the day I finish reading the book. Usually I time it to do it on the 13th. We did not have book club on the 13th this month because I was in Transylvania with Elvira touring the Dracula castle, amongst other things. But I've been back for 4 days now. And I had meant to read this book on the plane and on my trip and on my downtime, but it was such a good trip I didn't have time. So I didn't actually start reading this book until the 15th when I was on my way back, and I finished it today. So that's why book club's late. Scrolling through the chat. Charlie said, I want to assume that all the nasty tropes like slut shaming and fat shaming are because it was the 2010s, but it doesn't make the listening experience any better. Like, yeah, even if gross, awful stuff is realistic and true to the character, do we really need it? Do we really need more of that in fiction? There's other ways to make him gross in a novel. Plenty of other ways. Did it have to be these things that are just harmful to readers, harmful to people? Do we think the book was originally written without Ginger Danny in it, and was he written in later? Maybe, because when he dies, like, he's there. He's just kind of like a love interest for Kayla. They start bonding, and she's never had a boyfriend before. She's like, I don't even know what we are. And then he dies saving her. I thought he was going to live. I thought the survivors were going to be Kayla, her boyfriend, and her dad. Or maybe her dad would die sacrificially or something. But I thought, like, the breeding pair would live, because that's usually how it is. And she deserves a happy ending. But nope, he gets killed real fast. Stupidly. You know, he kind of saves her in the moment. Sacrifices himself the same way Leli sacrifices herself with her epiphany of serenity. Jenny was so quiet, even the writer forgot him. So it seems sometimes, and I think at the end it was deliberate because then he comes out of nowhere and saves the day. But at other times, you know, Coburn's saying where everyone is and what they're doing and just skips Danny every single time. Would I recommend this book outside of book club? To certain people I would. To people who prefer grittier types of vampires and not the romantic, emotional types of vampires. A lot of times people come to me and be like, I'm a man and I want to read a vampire book, but they're all so girly. Are there any vampire books for men? Here's one. Here's a vampire book for men. I don't think any man would find this book girly. So, if that's what you're looking for, not to disparage this book for being ungirly, but, if that's what you're looking for, there it is. You like your vampires to be irredeemable sometimes. Again, he reminded me of Cassidy. Yeah, you mentioned Cassidy in our book club chat from the Preacher or Priest. I get those two confused. Movie/comic. This is a vampire who's just a rough and tumble asshole. Yeah. He grew on me. I did like him. I started finding what I used to find annoying back at the beginning of the book, or very self-smug, or like the writer being like, he's an asshole, but you love him, right? Because he's just that cool. Did start feeling more natural and more grounded, and, I got a soft spot for him. And he's not irredeemable, because he gets redeemed. He has his whole redemption arc. That is this book. He learns how to person. He learns how to put others before himself. He learns how to think of... It's not really clear why he learns how to think of others before himself. It's not like there's a society he lives in where now he's going to be able to have friends. The society's gone. I guess it's not even for his own conscience even. It's just a change in him that just happens. And that's how he is now. I guess just a moral standpoint in his own heart, that he feels like, I can't stand being a selfish person anymore. To be happy with myself, I have to be unselfish. So it's not really towards any outward objective or goal. It's just something within him that means something. You see the Vampire Lestat as a book for man, as well as a book for women. I mean, sure. Most vampire books are for everybody. I see a lot of men, or manly people, turned off by Anne Rice in general, because her vampires have feelings, and we just want our vampires to be badass. We don't want them to have feelings. Well, guess what? Coburn gets feelings by the end of this book, and you can have feelings too, because everyone is allowed to have feelings. Don't let society tell you that men aren't allowed to have feelings. You are allowed. So yeah, that was a double dead. No, I didn't dislike it. There were parts that bothered me, but as I got to the end, I liked it. He grew on me, even as awful as he was. So I would recommend it, yeah. I wouldn't recommend it to someone who wants something feelingsy, but, if you just like your vampires and you like action, if you like gore, if you like zombies, if you like super, super gore, very visceral, detailed blood, guts spraying all over, exploding bodies, gore, this is the book for you. Which I don't mind. I'm fine with that. Oprah, you get a feeling, and you get a feeling. Now that I've started to write my own, how or why has it changed your view on vampires? Are you talking to me? I've been writing vampires since before this book was writing vampires. It's not just a started thing. And I started writing this book before I ever started doing vampire reviews. I started this book in 2009, and I started doing the show, Maven of the Eventide Vampire Reviews, in 2011, late 2011. So I was writing vampires even before I started to become a vampire scholar and learning more about them. And they're tied together. As I was writing this, my only knowledge of vampires was just from other books I read and just being a fan, not from being a scholar. And I've learned so much by being the Maven of the Eventide and discussing vampires with you all the time on the internet that, my horizons have been broadened. It hasn't really changed my view on vampires, because there is no one view on vampires. They're a very complex. It'd be like, how has this changed your view on women? My view on vampires was fine before. It's not like I hated them and now I love them. Dracula versus Sexy Cthulhu. I do know what you're talking about, because I wrote a book about sexy Cthulhu. You can find it on Amazon. In my book, Sexy Cthulhu goes to high school and falls in love with a high school girl. You heard it. Yes, I did write it to make you mad. I wrote it with some friends. It's a co-authored book. It's called Awoken. You can find it on the internet. Any more thoughts, feelings, questions, or opinions about this book? Anyone who's read both books want to mention something that you can compare? This is your chance. This is your time before we move on to the next subject. Oh, thank you, Lindsay, for the $4.99. Thanks for hosting book club. Thanks for coming to book club. Thanks for being here in book club. I really appreciate it. So, next month, we are reading something incredibly different. So I did a video here on my channel recently, a couple weeks ago, for my birthday. It was actually released on my birthday about all the vampire books I got for my birthday, which was tons. I got so many vampire books between Christmas and my birthday. And a lot of them were really interesting to my audience. So I told the Discord server that if there were some books that I mentioned in that video that you particularly want to read next month for Vampire Book Club, to mention them, and a few cropped up. So I took the 3 most popular ones, put it to a vote, and the one that won was The Witch and the Vampire. Very different seeming book. This is a very girly looking book compared to this. So we got another opposite side by Francesca Flores. I'll tell you about it. I love having variety in book club. I love going from one thing to a totally different thing. It is a queer Rapunzel retelling where a witch and a vampire who trust no one but themselves must journey together through a cursed forest with danger at every turn. Ava and Kay used to be best friends until one night 2 years ago when vampires broke through the magical barrier protecting their town, and in the ensuing attack, Kay's mother was killed and Ava was turned into a vampire. Since then, Ava has been trapped in her house. Her mother, Eugenia, needs her. Ava still has her witch powers, and Eugenia must take them to hide that she's a vampire as well. Desperate to escape her confinement and stop her mother's plans to destroy the town, Ava must break out, flee to the forest, and seek the help from vampires who live there. When there's another attack, she sees her opportunity and escapes. Kay, now at the end of her training as a flame witch, is ready to fulfill her duty to kill any vampires that threaten the town, including Ava. On the night that Ava escapes, Kay follows her and convinces her to travel together into the forest, while secretly planning to turn her in. Ava agrees, hoping to rekindle their old friendship and the romantic feelings she started to have for Kay before that terrible night. But with the monstrous trees that devour humans whole, vampires who attack from above, and Ava's stepfather tracking her, the woods are full of danger. As they travel deeper into the forest, Kay questions everything she thought she knew. The two are each other's greatest threat, and also their only hope, if they want to make it through the forest unscathed. So, this is a friends to enemies to lovers story about a witch and a vampire who also used to be a witch, in a high fantasy setting of a town, where a magical town where vampires and witches live. So if you like high fantasy, if you like lesbian stories, if you like witches and vampire dichotomy, this is the book for you. Judging by the cover, one of these hands is a Caucasian looking hand, and one of these hands is a brown person hand. I don't know, this could be any pale person, I guess, but I think we are also looking at an interracial relationship. Nice. Francesca Flores is the author, so nice to read a book that wasn't written by a white man, which is very common for vampire books. I'm looking to try to see if this is a young adult book. If it's categorized as a young adult. It's by Wednesday Books, which is an imprint of St. Martin's Publishing. I would have to look on Amazon to figure it out. But even if it is written as a young adult book, because maybe even though they're finishing their training and now they're adult witches, they probably might also still be teenagers. Possible. It was in the YA section when you bought it? Okay, yeah. I think I remember it being a young adult book. It is kind of like a, we're not in high school, we've just graduated which high school, and now we're on the run. So, like an older young adult book, especially because it's a romance. You are a man who would like more girly vampire books? Me too! I like all vampire books, especially girly ones. They are super fun. It's a heaving bosoms book, right? I don't think so. I don't think this is a heaving bosoms kind of book. Oh, thank you, Gaz. You're talking about my book compared to Chuck Wendig's book that were so different. If we boil it down, they have similarities, but you didn't really notice them while reading. That's good to know. I wasn't really afraid of it or afraid of people comparing. It was just sort of like a, I was here first, and then his book came out kind of situation. Yes, I did look under the dust jacket of Witch and the Vampire. Look how pretty it is. It's got a etched cover, which is leaves. It's a pretty leaf pattern. Let's try to get in, like, stop moving, camera. The pale person could also be a vampire. She could. Maybe she did used to have brown skin, just like the other person, and it turned white when she became a vampire. Vampires represent colonialism, and all brown vampires turn white. As long as you're not saying that they're more beautiful by turning white, you can get away with it, but we've had that problem before. The beautification of vampires by losing their melanin. The vampire is white. The witch is described as mixed race in the book. That's interesting. Cool. I like an interracial lesbian relationship. Very much what I'm into. So, you all wanted to hear about my trip. Why book club is late this month? Because I went on a trip. I was out of town on the 13th. That was actually kind of like right when I was coming back from my trip. I went to Romania and also Transylvania, which is part of Romania, on a celebrity tour that was hosted by Cassandra Peterson, who is Elvira, and the director of her film, Elvira's Haunted Hills, that was filmed in Romania. Sam Irvin, he was the director, and he was there, and he was like with us on the ground with the tour the entire time. Cassandra sort of came out, did her, moments. We had an autograph signing, we had a photo session, we had dinner with her a couple times, and watched the movie together with her, and then she would kind of go back and keep privacy to herself. But on the last couple days, she started coming around with us as well. We went to the Liberty Bear Sanctuary in Romania, which is a place where abused animals, mostly bears, but other animals as well, that have been in circuses or have been kept in horrible captivity situations. Like there's bears tied up in restaurants for tourists to come pet, bears that get walked around town with their eyes poked out so that people could take pictures with them. Horrible situations for these bears. They've been rescued, they brought to this bear sanctuary, and we got to go see them. And the sanctuary needs money, it needs donations. So when we were there, Cassandra made a video about the sanctuary asking people to donate, and it did really well. Like the donations came pouring in. It was wonderful. So if you're on Elvira's Facebook page or on her Instagram, you can go look through the pictures and videos she's posted, and that's the trip I was on. I was there with her. One of the last things we did was we went to Bran Castle in Transylvania, which is the castle that people think is closest to what could have been Dracula's castle in the book. So where Dracula's castle in the book is placed fictionally, there is no actual castle. And a lot of people like to say that Dracula was heavily inspired by, or actually supposed to be, Vlad the Impaler, who is the face of Romania, the Romanian hero. When you go there, all these souvenirs have Vlad III on them. He didn't actually live in Transylvania. He didn't rule Transylvania. He wasn't the voivode of Transylvania. He was in Wallachia, which is a different region of Romania, and his castle's over there. We went to where his supposed birthplace was. No one knows for sure. His supposed death place was. No one knows for sure where he's buried. And saw all the Vlad the Impaler stuff. But by the time you get over to Transylvania, which is not where he ruled or lived, but where Dracula the book takes place, the castles there, the one that is closest to the place where it's described in the book and also fits the style described in the book is Bran Castle, which isn't actually connected to Dracula anyway, but they've since embraced that, and they're since like, this is the closest castle that could have been Dracula's castle, so we're going to market it as Dracula's castle. We're going to do tours, and it's been completely refurbished. It was bought by a ruler like the last century, much more modern times, from the 1400s, when supposedly Dracula would have lived there. And it was refurbished, like all the walls were plastered. It was very homey. It's still very castle, like very medieval castle. The doors are real low. You have to duck to go in everything. The corridors are really windy because it was like this part was added on top of this part and this part. And it's very cool, but it is also very sleek and whitewashed and clean and pristine. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. Just, I like being there to see the architecture of the castle and thinking about in terms of Dracula, and like how Jonathan describes being in the castle and like going from room to room and actually feeling what that would have been like in a medieval castle that was as close as possible what his would have been. And just imagining, you know, if there were no plaster on these walls, and they had the plaster cut out in some parts where you could actually see the stone walls that would have been there in medieval times, and what these corridors would have been like. And underneath, the castle is built high on a rock, so there is a tunnel that goes down underneath the rocks in this sort of like secret area. And I'm not sure how much of that was there in medieval times versus hollowed out modern times. They have an elevator going there now, which used to be in a well, but now it's just an elevator. And in a way, it's a lot smaller than I was envisioning Dracula's castle to be, but in also some ways I was really impressed by the size, because like the rooms kept going. They were tiny little rooms, and I felt kind of like I was in a dollhouse, but they kept going and going and going, and I'm sure we didn't even see all the rooms. A lot of them were set up with replicas or actual antiques of the kind of furniture they would have had back in medieval times. But there was a part of it that was set up as a audiovisual show, a multimedia show, where they had projections, they have stuff written, there were TV screens. I was talking about all the traditional Romanian folklore, the kind of ghosts and monsters that are actually in Romanian folklore, beyond fictional things that a non-Romanian person wrote about, because Bram Stoker was not Romanian. So their actual own stories, and reading about those legends and those horror things and those spooky things was really cool, and seeing the projections of how they might have looked or how they might have scared you. And there's also some projections of Dracula and the way vampires were perceived in that part of the world originally, before Dracula became a story that made them popular. It was nice to see how much Romania has embraced Dracula and vampires as a tourist attraction, because that's why I was there, and I was kind of afraid I'd be there and be like, yeah, I'm into vampires, and then being like, stop calling us vampires, we hate getting that, just love us for our polenta or something. But no, they embraced it. At Dracula's castle there was a little haunted house, like a Not Scary Farm kind of haunted house, where you could go through, and it was pretty scary, and it had like animatronics that jumped out at you and stuff, and it was cool. And before that was kind of one of the last things we did, and we had dinner at Bran Castle as well, and that was a nice dinner. But before that, we had gone to Pelish Castle, which is a palace that was built when Romania decided it wanted to be a monarchy, and they invited a German nobleman to come and be king of Romania, because I guess they didn't have anyone local they thought would be a good king, so they imported a king, and he built a castle for himself that was in the German style. So even though it was a very gorgeous castle, it was done in the German Renaissance style, and it was built in the Romanian 1800s. So it was neither actually Renaissance nor actually German. So it was kind of like this guy came, he was like, oh, I'm nostalgic for this thing. And he was kind of like a nerdy fanboy of stuff. He had so many nerdy fanboy collections of like weapons and all kinds of stuff. And he built the palace of his dreams, even though it wasn't accurate to what, it was kind of like seeing a transplanted thing in Romania. Like, yes, it is a Romanian icon, it is part of their culture and a landmark there now, but it's not indicative of what was actually Romanian culture at the time. And Romanian architectural style is very influenced by the Germans. But gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, and so like opulent and extravagant. And before that, we had gone to a few towns. We went to Shikashora, which is a medieval town. It's a UNESCO site And it reminded me a lot of the towns that you see in like Dungeons and Dragons. And I play Curse of Strahd, and I was like going around this town, and I was like, this is just like that scene in Curse of Strahd, and now I can be like my D&D character. I know what it's like. And I was impressed by how vertical the town was. Like there was a lot of stairs, like the streets had steps, and you're always going up, and things were built on top of each other. It was on a hill, and that was pretty cool. It was just great to be in that environment. And supposedly that's where they say that Vlad the Impaler was born. And they have a house that's in the location where they think that it was the house he was born in. So there's a restaurant in that house called a Dracula restaurant, and I had lunch there. It was delicious. And I got the Dracula's Kiss cocktail, which was also delicious. And then they have the room where supposedly he was born, where his mother gave birth to him. And they have it all set up as like this spooky haunted house vampire thing. And you go in, and it's like red lights and spooky music, and there's a coffin with like a fake Dracula lying it. But then the fake Dracula sits up and starts talking to you, and it's an actor, and it was very scary and very fun, but it was also cute. Took pictures there. In Bucharest, we went and did all the Bucharesti touristy things. I went to the Therma Spa. I went to the spa. It was glorious. Google it. We did a tour of the House of Parliament, which was this gorgeous building. Again, very extravagant, very opulent, and gorgeous. And of course I'm going through these things being like, ooh, a vampire could live here. What would vampires think of this palace? I loved it. I had a wonderful time. I took a million pictures. And the greatest thing about this tour was that the people who were on it with me were the kind of people that would book a celebrity tour led by Elvira. So we're all a bunch of like nerdy goths and spooky kids and all ages, people from all over America. There were a couple of people not from America, but mostly Americans because it's an American-led tour. And just meeting all these people, they were kind of like kindred spirits, kindred minds. We bonded, we had fun. I made friends that are going to last a lifetime. It was great. How did I find this tour? I follow Elvira on Facebook, and there was a posting for it, like a little flyer. And I looked at it, and I was like, going to Transylvania with Elvira, of course I want to go. But I was like, I'm not actually going to do that. Like, who's actually going to pay money to do that? But I re-Facebooked it, reblogged it or whatever, shared it on my Facebook page, and I was just kind of like, who's with me? Joking. And then my mom saw that I posted that, and she's like, I'm with you. I would totally go on this tour with you. And I was like, really? You saw the price, right? Because it's an inflated price because you're paying a premium for Elvira being there. You sure you want to go? And she's like, yeah, I want to go. Let's do it. And I was like, all right, once in a lifetime, I'll pay the premium inflated Elvira price. I'll go to Transylvania, see Dracula's castle. My mom's coming with me. Mom says it's okay, so we're going to do it. So that was back in like 2021, like summer of 2021. And the trip was supposed to be spring of 2022. So I had a lot of time to pay it off before the trip. But then in like January of 2022, my mom hurt her back. She had an injury and she could barely walk. And it was a very walking heavy tour. There were a few older people on the tour who just couldn't keep up with the walking, and they had to sit out parts of the tour, even though they'd been warned. So my mom said, I can't walk, so I can't go on this tour. I would have to miss the whole tour. So she canceled her ticket. She got her money back. She had bought the travel insurance so she could do that. And then come spring 2022, they email us and they're like, this tour can't happen now. The stuff we want to take you to in Romania is still closed because of COVID. So we're going to push it back a year. We're going to go in spring 2023. So by the time that came around, of course, my mom's back was better and she could do the walking, but she had already canceled her ticket and she couldn't get back. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to Romania alone. I'll make friends, which I did. It was great being there alone, traveling alone. And a lot of people there were traveling alone. There were a few couples. Most of the people on the tour with us were queer. It was really cool just being around like so like-minded people. And I went alone and I made friends. Just because I saw it advertised on Elvira's Facebook one day. And I never would have done it if my mom hadn't been like encouraging to me. But it worked out very well. Can I use it as a tax write-off, a business expense? I can. Parts of it, much of it, I can. In fact, I already did because I paid for it 2 years ago, right? So I've already written that off on my taxes. Is directly related to my business. Traveling to Transylvania to learn about Dracula stuff and like get that research, the environment, that networking, and I'm technically making content out of it right now. I'm telling you about it, and this is a video that I will make money from. I've made, like you saw, I already made $5 from it because you gave me a super chat for $5. So yes, it is content, and write it off of my taxes. So yeah, that's the way I actually could afford it, was because I was able to, because I don't have that kind of money. Yeah, taxes. And we did read her book for book club. So they sent us a copy of her book, which I had already owned, obviously, because we read it for book club. And they're like, make sure you bring this to Romania with you. So I brought it. And I also brought the dust jacket from my book and one of my DVDs of Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. And she autographed all those for me. And it was really nice just to have her like sign stuff, talk to her, hang out with her. I didn't want to be weird and like creepy and monopolize her time, so I mostly just kind of stood by and listened to her talk to other people, but it was nice. On the last night when we had our farewell dinner, I got to sit at her table. Not everyone got to sit at a table with her. A few people in different dinners did, but on the last night, I got to. That was very special. And I loved her book when we read it for book club. It's one of the top 5 books we've read for this book club. I really did love it. You should read it if you haven't read it. It's fast, fun, easy to read. Do I think it's more important to have style or substance? I think substance is more important, but you add some style to that substance and you got yourself a winner. I'm definitely a substance over style person. You can tell because I'm wearing like pajamas to my live stream today. Though I did get my nails done. Do you like my nails? Where are they? They're pointy. I got like a purple on the bottom so I would look kind of dead. So while I was there, we did a Romanian cooking class, which I had to pay extra for, where they taught us to make 3 Romanian dishes, an appetizer, an entree, and a dessert. And that was really fun. Not all of us did the Romanian cooking class. It was a smaller, more intimate group, and the chef that was teaching us was very cool. He had a very nice vibe, and we just kind of like drank rum and got drunk and made Romanian food. We made a lot of polenta. A lot of polenta. I actually like the polenta. Here in America, the only time I've had polenta is when it comes in like a log and you cut it up and it's already stiff. There, it was like the actual polenta meal that we mixed with water and could make it the consistency we wanted it to be. And so it was nice eating it that way. And we made crepes for dessert. They didn't call them crepes. They just called them pancakes, but they were delicious. So now I can cook Romanian food. Look at me. Yes, I did love your country. I loved it. I would go back in a second. I wish that the tour had been more focused on Brasov and less on Bucharest, because Brasov was where all the cool stuff was, but we did spend most of the time in Bucharest. And I did get to go to that spa. That was cool, and the cooking class was there, but I would have rather not done those things and spent more time in Brasov and seen more of the historical stuff rather than the modern stuff. And so the history was why I wanted to go there. See, we didn't end up talking about Elvira this time. We ended up talking about Elvira. If you have questions about her personally, I can answer them. But I was just impressed by the trip. It was nice that she was there, and a lot of focus of the trip was on the movie that she filmed there. So we went to the studio where the movie was filmed, and the director, Sam, was there with us, and he was telling us stories about all the filming. They did film a few location shots. So we went to the medieval church where they filmed the exteriors of the castle for that movie. But most of it was filmed indoors on a set. And originally, Cassandra had gone to Romania and had seen all the castles and all the crumbling mansions. She's like, I could film a movie in this castle. We could film a movie here. It would be great. And she wanted to come there and film her movie on location at one of those decrepit castles. But when Sam came on board to direct, he had filmed in Romania before, just in studios, because it's a great place to film economically. He said, well, the good thing about Romania is you can build a huge set in a studio soundstage for very few dollars. The bad thing about Romania is if you want to film on location at one of those decrepit castles, there's no electricity, there's no water, there's no way to like set up lights and sound and everything. You're in the middle of nowhere with like zero resources. It's really hard. If you go to a castle that does have lights and electricity and water, it's roped off like a pristine palace and it doesn't look decrepit and gothic like what you want. So instead of filming on location in Romania, they actually just filmed on a very great soundstage in Romania that we got to go visit. And it's actually the same studio where they filmed the Wednesday TV show. So we got to see the entire set for the Wednesday TV show because that was still up. And the Wednesday TV show is switching its filming to Ireland. They might still use Romania for some of their stuff, but they got like some tax incentive to switch all to Ireland. But in Romania, they built the entire town of Jericho. That whole town is there. And the part where they go to Pilgrim World was another set that they had on there from an old Wild West film that they shot there. They saved that town too. So the Wednesday production went and used that set for their Pilgrim World town. The whole town of Jericho is built. I got to wander around. It's life-size. It's full-size. It's weird because you see the church and all the buildings and they're completely realistic looking. Then you go around back and it's just like slats and boards. The school, Nevermore Academy, the interior, the courtyard area where the fountain is and where like Gomez has the fight in the flashback with the bad guy, the guy he kills, was all there. I got to go inside and it felt like you really were in this stone edifice, and then you like knock on the wall and it's made of foam. And then the exterior of the Nevermore Academy from the Wednesday TV show was filmed at an actual castle further out in the country. And we drove past it, so we kind of stopped by and got out. We didn't tour it, but we got out and took some pictures. And they really photoshopped the castle to make it look more Adamsy. Like it has this tower, but it has a flat roof, so they added that like gothic Adams tower to it in post-production. But we were there. We got to see the Wednesday sets. That was very cool. And we went to another backlot studio where Sam Irvin had directed a different film, and we got to tour that. That was fun. And like as a movie person, I was really interested in all this studio stuff. And I feel like a lot of the people on the tour were also movie people because we're all Elvira fans, so we're there fans of her movies. So we were interested in that sort of thing. But if I were to go back to Romania, I wouldn't focus on movie stuff this time. I would focus more on historical stuff. And I would like to go back, and I would like to take my mom this time or some other friends. Just go spend more time in those medieval cities, spend more time in those castles. Everything felt kind of rushed because we had such a packed schedule. So there's so much more I could have done. I would love to do. I'd go back there. And do it much more affordably now that I know the ropes. Romania is a very affordable place to visit. The dollar goes a long way there. A long way. That was a very nice perk. I'm not talking about Anne Rice yet. Surprise! Isn't that interesting? I'm not even talking about Elvira, though I'd like to. Ask me questions. How much of her persona is an act? Like, her persona would come out, and it wasn't like she was doing Elvira. She would just say things or make jokes of things that was like, oh, there's Elvira right there. But then other times she was very quiet. She was very reserved. She almost seemed like she wanted to keep herself separated from the public at first. This is the first time they've done a celebrity tour with her, so I got the feeling that she and her agent, who was there protecting her and instructing her and telling her what she was allowed to do and what she wasn't allowed to do, weren't sure how it would work being amid the fans and with the fans and along with the fans, and if we would be creepy weirdos, if we would be monopolizing her time or being inappropriate with her, because, as a sex symbol, you never know what kind of creeps are going to show up. But once they got to know us better and spent more time with us, and they realized like how cool we all were, and we're just like nerds, queer nerds, goths. And she was there with her wife or her girlfriend. I'm not sure if they're married. And her agent was there with his girlfriend. And so she started opening up, and we started seeing more of her personality towards the end. And it was really cool. And a lot of Elvira is just her exaggerated, and she'd make those same kind of jokes. And she's very fun once that personality came out. Takes a lot of time to travel from place to place in Romania. That would be the most bothersome part. Yes, we had a couple 4-hour bus rides. But the great thing about those 4-hour bus rides, besides we make lots of stops along the way, was getting to know the people on the tour with me. And we all got along so well. And I spent hours talking to them about vampire movies, about the things I talked to you about here on the show, about stuff that we're all into. But I think if I went back, I would just stay in that more Brasov area, so I wouldn't have to make that long bus ride back to Bucharest at all. If I could find a way to fly in there without having to fly into Bucharest. a great trip. I could tell you so much more about it, but I'm like blinking in the moment. Blame it on the peanut butter chocolate martini, which was really good. If you get Screwball whiskey where you live, the peanut butter kind, highly recommend it. Mix it with Godiva chocolate liqueur or Mozart chocolate liqueur. Very delicious. You have a feeling as someone might have asked this already. They haven't. Did anyone in the tour group recognize me? Not a single person. Nope, no one knew who I was. I thought people might. I thought the kind of people who go on this tour might have like watched some of my vampire reviews or something, but nope, no one did. So they were all very happy to get to know me and meet me, and I gave out a lot of business cards, and some of them even joined the Discord server. Some of them joined this book club. They're there on the server with us, friends with us now. They all know me now, but no one there did know me ahead of time. So it was nice to not have to like have that pressure or anything. Sorry I asked this, you're quite late. What's the next book? I will tell you again. We have already discussed the next book, but to repeat, the next book is The Witch and the Vampire by Francesca Flores. It is a new book, just came out very recently. Our theme this month was new releases that I received for my birthday. Look it up. You can get it online. If you are in the Discord server, I put a link to where you can purchase it in the book club suggestions section like I always do. Look, it has like such pretty formatting and stuff. You have until June 13th to read it, because book club always goes from the 13th to the 13th. I think I'm actually going camping on June 13th, so we might actually read it slightly late, or live stream about it slightly late again, which gives you more time to read the book. Lucky you. Think about what book you want to read next. Put your suggestions in the book club suggestions channel on the Discord server, or what type of book you want to read next, because I love when I get like a genre. Like 1 month someone said that we wanted to read mysteries, so I went to my shelves and I found 3 mysteries and we voted on them. So if there's a certain theme or genre you want to do next, put that suggestion in the book club suggestions Discord channel, or if you're not in the Discord, and that's fine, put it in the comments of this video, not the chat, because that I won't see, but in the comments of this video, and I will find it and I will consider it. And comments are good for my videos. They make the algorithm happy. They make more people able to see these videos. They make my show get more widespread to people who may want to support my show, which you can do by joining my Patreon. Link is in the description. There's also links to all the books on my shelves in the description. I made like an Amazon storefront, so you don't have to go watch through my videos and write everything down. You just go scroll through those links. You can find where to buy these books. I had to make 3 separate storefront lists because storefronts only let you put 400 things on them. And a lot more than 400 things. There is also a link in the description to buy my book, which comes in hardback. Here's the pretty hardback version. Look, it's me on the back flap. Or paperback. Or ebook. It is on Kindle Unlimited, so if you subscribe to that, you get it for free. If you want to support me but you don't want to read the book and you have Kindle Unlimited, you can get it and then just flip to the end of the book, and I get paid in full. Kindle Unlimited works by page flips, so the more pages you flip, the more money an author gets. It is also available in audiobook. This is a 9 CD set audiobook, if you like audiobooks the old-fashioned way. There's also an MP3 CD version, which I think costs less. And there's also like the Audible download. You could just download it on Audible. Use your Audible credits. Listen to the audiobook, narrated by Tracy Odom. Fabulous narrator. Lots of ways to read my book. And then you can compare it to Double Dead and see if you think it's similar. A lot of the stuff in Double Dead that I was like, oh man, he did the same thing I did, aren't things that you'll see or really fully grasp until book 2, which probably will come out not this year. It's coming. Don't worry. It will come. It's fully written. It just needs to be like processed, you know. And third book is also fully outlined, so I'm not worried about Double Dead influencing me, even though so many things are similar. You'll see. You'll be like, oh yeah, now I see what she means when you finally read that book later. If you read the Kindle version twice, do I get paid twice? I think so. I think if you like flip pages, go back, flip again, I think I could just get paid for every single page flip. I'm not 100% sure if it's on the same copy, if that happens, or if you can only flip through it once. But I think so. So flip the pages, even if you don't want to read it. Support me in my books. You can also support me by joining my Patreon. So the book club is free. Anyone can join. The Discord is free. Anyone can join, but it is supported by the Patreon. So the patrons pay for my more edited videos, my Let's Plays, my book hauls, and my vampire reviews. And they pay for those videos individually, but that all kind of goes in the same hat, which also supports this book club. So even if you don't watch those videos and you want to support, just sign up for the Patreon. $2 a video. Easy peasy. As Coburn would have said, lemon motherfucking squeezy. And you can use the affiliate links to buy books, and I get a little like cut of that. You can also send me books if you want to. My P.O. Box address is in the description if there are books you want to read in this book club that I don't own yet, because we only read books I own. You can make me own that book. You can send it to me. A lot of people send me old books or used books that they find books are getting rid of, or if you want to order a book, you can just send it there. Anything that you want to consider for this book club, make me own it, and then it will go into the consideration. It's all up to you. You choose what... I chose the last book. It was my birthday book that I wanted to read. Now it's up to you. Think about what you want to read next. Did I learn any Romanian phrases? I did not. I learned how to say thank you. Well, I heard a lot of people saying thank you. I didn't practice it, but to me it sounded like multimask, which to me sounds like multi-mask, which when I saw it written, it didn't look like it was written like multimask at all, but that's the way they were pronouncing it, so I don't know if that's correct or not. But that was the only phrase that I kind of picked up. Everyone there speaks English, which is why I would love to go back again, because it was very easy to communicate and get around. The signs are often in English. There's always the Romanian version, the English version, often French and Italian as well. We drove through a lot of farm country where all the rape flowers were blooming, just gorgeous yellow flowers, which the rape seed is what they use to make canola oil out of. And I learned about like Romanian agricultural history, how it all used to be cereal and corn based, which is why they eat so much polenta. And now it's all oil based rape flowers, which are yellow. And we went out into the fields and we took pictures. Just gorgeous countryside. The mountains were gorgeous. You could look up at the mountains and see the snow falling on the top of the Carpathians. And I was just like, Jonathan Harker went through there. Where would Jonathan Harker's carriage have gone? It was very fun. For those who are interested in my makeup, which sometimes you are, I'm doing like a purple thing today, which is from this eyeshadow palette, which is the Cthulhu Desserts eyeshadow palette, Cthulhu Cupcakes, from Vampire Cosmetics. It's another one of those book palettes, so it has multiple pages of colors. And I am wearing Edible Horror, because I thought edible horror was a good theme to go with our zombie book where everyone's eating each other. Edible horror with extra chips and highlighted by gods. See my mirror, see my microphone, see my screen, see yourselves. Wow. Cthulhu Desserts eyeshadow palette. And on my lips is my favorite Anastasia Beverly Hills lip gloss. What about having one of the authors who sent you their book joining in on book club? Yeah, that would be great. So Sam Irvin, who was on the tour with us and very friendly, has written a book recently called How I Became a Teenage Monster Hunter, which is an independently published book, and all the proceeds from it go to the Trevor Project. And I've invited him on my show to talk about that book, so we're probably going to get that soon. Haven't done the interview yet, but we're going to get the author on and you're going to hear about his book. And then that's a book that we could read. It's a non-fiction book about horror actors in the 70s, 80s. So like a lot of the Hammer horror actors that he interviewed back when they were big, like Christopher Lee, Ingrid Pitt, like that whole time period. If you're interested in the history of vampire cinema, be a good book for us to read. I will share a link with that too. But when I talk to him about it on my show, you'll hear all about it. We'll discuss it. That would be fun. But any other vampire books that we read for book club, if the author is someone who's like one of us, yeah, I would totally have the author on. Though I wouldn't specifically read a book at an author's request. That makes me very uncomfortable because, as you know, I'm very critical about what I read and I say what I think, and especially if there's problematic stuff that bugs me, like all the fat shaming in this book, I'm gonna talk about it. And I don't like being mean to people or hurting their feelings, so that would be kind of awkward. So it depends on the situation, you know, it depends. I would also like to have guests on to talk about books with me, some of my friends. We can have more of a conversation. I just need to find a book they're interested in reading. Am I going to the Vampire Ball in New Orleans? Yes, I am. This Halloween, the Vampire Ball, there's 2 Vampire Balls in New Orleans in Halloween. The Anne Rice Fan Club Vampire Ball, which is the one I go to, the one I love, sold out so fast. You can still get tickets, but not like the combo tickets or anything, but that's selling out so fast. So if you want to go to that one, buy your tickets now. And there's also the Endless Night Vampire Ball, which is like the big corporate event vampire ball, which you can get tickets for until whenever. And I'm going to go to both of them because they're on different nights this year. I said Anne Rice. Yes, I will always say Anne Rice's name at least once or twice. It's probably like the 5th time I've said it. I'm going to talk about Anne Rice. I don't have anything particular to say about Anne Rice this time. The only news is that the actor for the TV show who played Claudia has been replaced with a different actor. No one knows why. She posted about it and says it was like unforeseen circumstances. So I'm guessing some kind of conflict of interests. Can't be something she already had planned, like being in other projects or anything, because that wouldn't be unforeseen. So who knows? Very mysterious. I was upset too. She's a great actor, but the new actor also looks good, and they kind of look similar, so I'm sure she will do a wonderful job. You got started on her book about 2 weeks ago. Whose book? Which book? I shared a couple of photos from my trip on Discord. Well, I'll be sharing more or using it for a video in the future. Mentioned I was uncertain on how exactly I was going to go about it all. Yeah, I didn't end up vlogging anything while I was there. I did take a lot of pictures. And I could tell you about the trip, but I haven't got anything kind of messagey or thematic to say about it. I couldn't merely make a documentary about it. I would just be like, and we were here, and we were here, and we were here. This was what we did. I don't have any sort of story to tell that has a narrative to it. So I probably won't make a specific content out of that trip, but will use my experiences from that trip in various ways in future content for sure. And if you want to see more pictures, I can share more pictures. I want to get better at doing Instagram, so I'll go back through my camera roll and start uploading stuff to Instagram. Even though I know the appeal of Instagram is you're posting it like in the moment. No, I have to edit my pictures. I have to make them look pretty, and then I can post them. Oh, the book you're reading is Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice. That is her first book. It's a good one to start with. Am I going to be reviewing season 2 as well of the Anne Rice Vampire Show? Probably. I don't know if I will do such hard work interviewing it as I did the season 1. Because that was a lot of really hard work, which I was hoping would drive more viewers to me and get me more followers and get more people to join my Patreon, and it didn't. The videos did well individually, but it didn't do anything to make me as a channel grow, which was a bit disappointing. So I don't see the point in working myself to the bone so hard to do what I did last year on season 1 with season 2, so it'll probably be something more low effort. Not low effort, but less effort. Because that was really high effort last year and it did not pay off. Even though I had fun. It was a passion thing. I was speaking my truth, right? Is my Instagram open to the public? You haven't been able to find it. Well, my Instagram name is the same as my Twitter name and my Tumblr name, which is Elisa in Time. Why am I in time? Well, better than being late. And it is public. If you find me, Elisa in time, just add me. No, I really don't use Instagram very much, but I mean to. I'm going to get better at it. That's my plan. Maybe just one video on season 2. Maybe. I mean, I do get paid for every video I put out by whatever my Patreon is. So the more videos I put out, the more financial success I get. But I could put out those videos at any time. So even if I'm doing 7 videos again, I wouldn't have to rush week to put out all 7 videos and try to be on top of the game and everything, because it didn't make a difference. It didn't matter. So I could take more time with those 7 videos and still have the videos and earn the income from them, but without like killing myself to do it. Because people watch it when they watch it. I do have cool art projects on my Instagram. Art projects that I keep meaning to sell. I want to make an Etsy store and sell those art projects because they're fun to make. But I haven't done that yet. Mainly because it's hard to take pictures of things that are behind glass, and I want to take like really nice photos of them. I don't know how. I'll figure it out. Have I been writing this month, and what have I been working? I'm always writing. A lot of times I'm just working on writing fan fiction, but I write every single day. I write a lot of fan fiction. It's practice, right? It is like my writing warm-up for writing the real stuff. Also writing scripts for vampire videos. I'm not writing this week on my novels or anything. Taking a break from that. I love you guys. You're so much fun. Fan fiction about my trip. Me in Dracula's castle, and then Dracula came. It was true love. There's an idea. Or about Elvira and Dracula. That would be fun. I wonder if there is an Elvira section of fanfic on AO3. I've never even thought to look. I bet there is. Now, I love writing fan fiction. I have no shame about that. It is writing practice, is writing exercise. It wets my whistle, and then, you know, it gives me ideas too sometimes. Like sometimes I get cool plot twists and stuff from it. Will we ever read my book for book club? No. I'm not going to talk about my own book. But if another book club wants to read my book for their book club, and if you have, please do. And if you want me to be there for any reason, you can invite me to be there. I would be happy to be there, even if you're critical. But I love answering questions about my book and explaining the meta and stuff. But I wouldn't do it for this book club unless I had like a guest host or something. All right, guys. It's been more than 2 hours. I usually try to keep this under 2 hours, but I love talking to you, and I'm happy that you are here with me. If you have more questions about my trip with Elvira, you can ask me in the comments, and I can answer there, and it will be good for the algorithm. Or come on my Discord. You can ask me there. Or about the book that we read, thoughts and feelings, or about my book and how it compares, or any thoughts you have with that, any other conversation starters you want to start. In the meantime, get reading on The Witch and the Vampire. We are already 6 days into our reading month, so almost a week has passed. So if you don't have it yet, get it. As it's YA, it might be an easier read. They often are. So you can catch up. And we will discuss it after June 13th. Or in the meantime, on the Discord server, we'll discuss it together there, like we always do. And think about what you want to read next, what type of book you want to read next, and put your suggestions in the server. Don't suggest books I don't already have, unless you want to make me have them. I won't put them up for a vote unless I have them. But if you want to suggest books for me to think about having in the future, you can do that, and I will add them to my to-get list. Weird question. How's my lip gloss not smearing when I drink? It is like a matte lip gloss, like, see, nothing. Maybe a little bit of purple. But it's very dry finish. It's good stuff. I like it because when you talk about vampires and you say V a lot, you bite your lip. And I always end up with lipstick on my teeth. So saying V words while you're wearing lipstick is very, dangerous. So I like lip glosses like this that are very dry. That is my tip to you. If you want to talk about vampires while wearing lipstick. I'll get Dom Noble for a guest host. He's already done a review of my book. He did a whole book club review of my book on his channel already. Go watch it. He was very sweet about it. He's so nice. He said such nice things to me about my book. I asked him if he ever wanted to come on book club and just talk about another book that we read together. And he said, yeah, if there was a book he was interested in. So if you have a book that you think, a vampire book you think he would be interested in reading, I can suggest it to him and ask if he can join us for book club. Because he likes to talk about books as much as I do. All right. It is bedtime. I wish you all a very good night, a good evening, and happy reading. Get your drinks. Go to your coffins. Turn into mist. Pet your wolves. All of the above. Right? Yes. Good night.